says, something is. Do you want to leave?
Okay. It looks like. Let me do a sound check. Okay. Okay, it looks like AV1 streaming is working now. AV1, how about that? We are finally streaming in AV1 to YouTube. It actually works now. Let me see, what's my... Yeah, we are using the video codec 0, which is the AV1 encoder, on the Radeon RX 7600, so it's working. And I'm actually playing this game at 1440p. So what we'll do in this stream, depending on what the viewers want to talk about, we'll talk about the news from Computex, because there's a lot of stuff going on right now. But I will try playing games with the 7600 at 1440p. Because I know I didn't review 1440p on this card. Whoops, not walking mode. I need to do my dailies while we wait. But actually, let me check something here. So... I want to try to see... I'm just going to go to my own live stream. I want to watch it. I want to see what the viewers see. I want to watch it. Oh, wow. This is weird. I have to mute myself. I want to see what it looks like. Hey, Joey. Alright, what does this say? Oh, wow. We are actually... Okay, I want to get some look at this here. I want to see. Wow. I'm actually streaming in AV1. This is actually an AV1 encoded live stream, and it's actually working. We are streaming at native 1440p on the RX 7600. Alright, let's see how this actually looks. I'm looking at my own stream to see how the image quality looks. It actually looks pretty good. So, the weekend is almost here. Whoops. Okay, I guess I don't need to watch my own stream anymore, but let me go back to the dashboard. That is interesting. So, for some reason, it works. YouTube is finally letting me live stream in AV1. It actually doesn't block it, so that the viewers can actually see it now. I can see it. At least Joey can see it, so that's good. We'll see if some other people are able to tune in and see the video feed. I don't see why it wouldn't work, though. If both of us can see it, I'm pretty sure everyone else will be able to see it. So, lots of interesting news from Computex this week. So... we'll see. Actually, you know what? Let me move myself over here. Because that's easier for everyone to see. Like, the UI for the game shows up better if I'm over here in this corner. For this particular game. So, it actually works. I'm surprised. It's actually working. And it's working at 1440p. 60 frames per second, 1440p. Wow. On a 7600. See, so I know one of the things that I did not talk about in my review... Well, did I talk about it in my review? I don't think I did. I don't think either one of my videos talked about the newer encoder. I guess in my first video, in the review where I compared it with the older graphics cards, thinking back to it, I should have actually talked about the encoder, because I think that's a large... it may not be a big selling point at this end of the market, but it gives people that are on that strict budget the the ability. It enables them, whereas they would not have been able to do something like this had they had still been on older hardware. And the same applies, like, choosing a graphics card like this over a discounted 6700, because I really think that the closest card to this GPU is the 6700. The 3060 Ti is also very close. The 3060 Ti technically is a tad bit faster by like 2%. But they're so close. That's why I said in my most recent video that the 7600 is essentially a 2080 Super. It's a 2080 Super. When I said that, I was completely oblivious to the fact that if you go to Tech Power Up, let's look at it here. Let's go to Tech Power Up real quick. So on Tech Power Up, they've updated their site to include this card in their relative performance chart now. So if we look here, Radeon RX 7600, if we hold this one to 100%, you can see here the GeForce, I don't know why it's selecting all this other stuff. The GeForce RTX 2080 Super is also 100%. So that means both of these graphics cards are equivalent. So it's about, 4% or so faster than the 2080. I know that's not how you convert percentages when you look at stuff that's weaker, but it's pretty much 2080 Super, which means it is basically a 3060 Ti. 3060 Ti is going to be 3% faster. I don't like these prompts. Why do these prompts keep showing up? It's 3% faster than a 2080 Super, hence it is also 3% faster than a 7600. So that means that the closest card is actually the 6700 non-XT. If we were to bring that card up, let's go over here. Whoops, I didn't want to go to this one. Let's do a search. $6,700. You've got 2080 Super. You should test it against yours. See, so technically, according to Tech Power Up. Now remember, Tech Power Up is not the be-all, end-all when it comes to comparing GPUs, but this is a general frame of reference. I would say that Tech Power Up is relatively accurate, with some margin of error, but it's relatively close. So you can see here, Tech Power Up says that an RX 6700, according to Tech Power Up, the 7600, which is literally just the 6 and the 7 inverted or backwards, is 2% faster. So this is the reason why, some of the guys in the Discord were recommending 6700. And I understand that argument because it's got 10 gigabytes of VRAM. It's essentially a PlayStation 5 in terms of rasterization. And it can be had for relatively cheap compared to what it was a year ago, if you can still find one. These are the XTs. But the 6700 right here, I don't know about that. 369, that doesn't look good. So that's still sold by Newegg. So that one, the price on that's kind of wrong. But if you can find one for around $300, well, if you can find one for $300, I think it's fine. A 6700. So this is obviously too much, but that's kind of where it should be, because according to Tech Power Up, they're really close. See? So technically, according to Tech Power Up, I didn't even know this. This is new to me, but the 7600 is actually 2% faster than the 6700. So that means it's pretty much in line with how the 4060 Ti turned out. That ended up like a few percentage points higher than a 3070, and this thing's a few percentage points higher than a 6700. So it ends up kind of being the same sort of thing, same boats, like marginal improvement over last generation, I guess, for less power. so it's more energy efficient. So not a terrible card. The 6700. It's becoming much harder to find though. So I feel like the 2 gigabytes of VRAM would be the only reason why somebody would buy a 6700 over a 7600 XT, because the 7600 XT, even though it's 8 gigabytes and it's a 128-bit bus, like I said in my review, I don't see people buying this card for 1440p. If you're looking for 1440p, you're going to want 12 gigabytes of VRAM or 16 gigabytes of VRAM. So unfortunately right now, the options are kind of slim. However, there are some pretty decent ones as long as you're willing to go AMD, because the 6950 XT is 16 gigs of VRAM, and you can find those for close to 600, 629. So, and this is a really fast card, so $30 off. So this is literally $600, and it's the ASRock Phantom Gaming, which I'm actually pretty impressed with the ASRock Phantom Gaming, I might add. So this one, to me, seems like it's the best value right now for 1440p. Now, if you want to save some money, then you can drop down to a 6800 XT, though I think those are still around. Yeah, so this one saves like another $100 or so. Dropping down to this, you can get like a... The XFX Merc is actually one of the best coolers for RDNA 2. So this one's actually really good. And this one doesn't have a instant rebate, but it's basically $80 less than the 6950 XT. So basically close to $100 savings for a card that is actually really good for 1440p now that I think about it. You don't have to worry about VRAM. So for people who are looking for 1440, this is kind of where you are in terms of the pricing required to achieve 1440p. But for 1080p, it's pretty affordable. You know, at $269 for a 7600, I think that's kind of what I would do. I mean, that's what I would do, because to me, that's the most practical. The most practical option would be this, because you get all the modern conveniences, the low power consumption, the latest encoder, so you're not limited if you want to delve into any sort of production stuff. You can do that with this card, like we are streaming in AV1 right now to YouTube off of this exact graphics card. So, well, not this XFX one, but, you know, the 7600. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the 7600. I think it's definitely, compared to the other cards that we've seen launch this year, this one is the most tolerable option in my mind. The other cards that were from NVIDIA, the 4070 Ti is too much. They stretched the 70 Ti pricing way too high on that one. And then the 4060 Ti also is just... The 4060 Ti, we'll see how the higher VRAM one will be perceived by the public. I just don't think it's going to make that much sense, because it's too close. $500 for a 4060 Ti. Now it looks like you're stretching the 60 class card way too far in terms of the price point. So yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it's good value in my mind. And I know people are going to always ask about ray tracing. It's like, well, think about the type of person that spends, you know, $300 on a graphics card, or $250 to $350, in that range. Like the average gamer who is spending that much money on a graphics card, I can pretty much guarantee you they're not thinking about ray tracing. They may or may not be aware of it. By this point in time, they're probably aware of it, but it's more like a novelty, and it's not really a must-have. That's just the reality of it. Because I talk to a lot of different people that play games in their spare time, and I've seen the whole gamut. Like, I've seen the hardcore, like, ray tracing enthusiasts, people who play Minecraft, path tracing, etc., all that. But then you get, like, the people who only play competitive games, like League of Legends, Overwatch 2, etc. They don't care so much about ray tracing. In fact, even if the game offers RT, like for example, Fortnite, they turn it off because they want faster FPS performance. So it's literally like a novelty to them. They don't care about the RT because they're not going to actually use it. So there's a lot of that. And then there's everyone else who's in between. You've got the people who play a lot of single player games. You got the people that play a lot of RPGs, MMOs, the social games, MOBAs, casually, you know, not like hardcore competitive, but just like with friends on a weekend, you know, those kind of people. They don't really care about RT either because they're just satisfied playing League of Legends with their friends, you know, on a Friday night or something. So, or Smite, or Dota 2, or you see what I'm saying? Like that. Those are the sort of people that buy $250 to $350 graphics cards. That's the reality. That's the reason why I didn't really see the point in evaluating RT. I might actually do it. I probably will at some point in the near future. I will revisit RT on a 7600. Although, I mean, let's be honest, like people aren't really going to care by the time I release that video. So I don't know. It's going to be a lot of work to re-benchmark everything. Then I'm going to have to re-bench like some other card, probably Intel's card. And Intel's card I expect to do much better in RT than the AMD one. However, I do think that what will probably end up happening is Intel's advantage in RT will basically close the gap on the AMD card, but the AMD card will probably still win in most cases because its rasterization was just so much further ahead than the Intel GPU. Good GPU, 1440, no RT, 7900 XT. 7900 XT is probably the best GPU you can get for 1440p. Regardless of whether you're doing ray tracing or not. Even with ray tracing, it's still the best GPU for 1440p. The NVIDIA GPUs only really shine when you're really pushing the RT at 4K. And realistically, if you're doing that, there's only really one GPU that can achieve that objective, and that would be the 4090. So yeah, for 1440p, 7900 XT is the best one. Like you can go look at my review that I did last year for that graphics card. I covered that card in depth on the channel back in December of last year. So I've got multiple videos on that one. I did RT. I did the regular rasterization. I looked at like power consumption. So yeah, it's definitely good because here's the thing. 7900 XT. Here, let me put things into perspective for you guys to make it easy for you guys to memorize this stuff. So when it comes to 1440p, whoops. And I've been meaning to use that new software. Oh my, what happened here? This is terrible. That's still too small. Okay, that's acceptable. Whoa, what? Okay, you know what? Okay, 1440p, 7900 XT. Here's the thing. 7900 XT is equal to 3090 Ti. 3090 Ti. 7900 XT uses 300 watts. 300 watts. 3090 Ti uses 450 watts. In rasterization, so okay, in RT, 7900 XT is equal to 3080 Ti. So there you go. This is the reason why this is ray tracing. So, here's the thing you gotta remember. The 3080 Ti is actually, okay, you know what? Instead of saying 3080 Ti, I'll say 3090. Because 3080 Ti and 3090 are the exact same thing. The only difference is one of them has 12 gigabytes of RAM and the other one has 24. So they perform the exact same in rasterization. So basically, this is the best option because it's the most affordable. And it gives you 3090 Ti class performance in every game. And in some cases, it's faster. It is either greater than or equal to 3090 Ti, and in ray tracing is equal to 3090. So and it's not like 3090's RT is bad. See, so this is the reason why, yes, for 1440p, if you want to go all out on 1440p, 7900 XT is the maximum that I would go in terms of spending money on 1440p, because that's kind of the upper limit. What I would actually recommend for 1440p is 6800 XT or 6950 XT. These are my recommendations for 1440p. Those are what I would recommend people get. But if you want to go all out and you want to spend even more money than what I'm recommending, then this is the way to go. Why do I say this? Why am I not recommending 4070 Ti? Well, the reason why I do not recommend, I think everybody already know, people who watch my streams already know what I'm about to say. There's a reason why I will never recommend the 4070 Ti, because it is trash. And the reason why it's trash is because it only has 4070 Ti is trash. We'll just say trash because it only has 12 gigabytes of VRAM. This is why this card is, in my mind, complete garbage and a waste of money. If you want to spend $800, if you want to throw away $800 in the trash, you can buy one of these cards. It's not going to age well, not enough RAM, especially what we've seen this year is literally the tip of the iceberg. So you don't want to be going into 2024 with a 12 gigabyte graphics card if you're on a 1440p high refresh rate monitor. So that's my opinion on that. Don't forget, 7900 XT, 20 gigabytes of VRAM versus 12 gigabytes of VRAM on the 4070 Ti. Oh, and the other thing is, well, the 4070 is an interesting one. 4070, well, hold on, because 4070, isn't that the one that's, yeah, never mind. See, the thing is, here's the thing, guys. The reason why I'm recommending 6950 XT is because 6950 XT equals 4070 Ti. That's the reason, in rasterization, that's the reason why I recommend this card over this card, because this card has 16 gigs and it's cheaper versus 12 and spending more money. You see what I'm saying? There's no good value proposition with the 4070 Ti. So that's basically my final thoughts on the upper, not the absolute end of the market, but like the upper, the 1440p market. Because in my mind, these are the 1440p cards. This is kind of an entry-level 4K graphics card because it has 20 gigabytes of VRAM. However, if you want to oversize your graphics card for 1440p, the 7900 XT would be the graphics card to get. Take it from me, as somebody who, as an owner of a 3080 Ti, I cannot in good conscience recommend 4070 Ti. 4070 Ti is basically 3080 Ti all over again. It's like, what is it? Yeah, it's basically a 3080 Ti with an AV1 encoder. That's basically a 4070 Ti. So yeah, it uses less electricity, I know that. But it's like, which looks better? Telling someone that you have a 3080 Ti or telling someone you have a 4070 Ti? Which one actually is going to be perceived better? Because typically people who buy those 80 class cards, they tend to have a bigger ego than people who buy the 70 class cards. So if you tell someone who has an ego, not that you have an ego, but if someone else has an ego, and you go and tell them that you have a 3080 Ti, you know, they're gonna perceive that like, oh, you know, versus if you tell them I got a 4070 Ti, they're like, ah, okay, yeah, okay, cool. That's like a peasant thing, you know. They're gonna think that even though you spent that much money for it, they're gonna think that it's a peasant card. You see what I'm saying? So that's another reason why I wouldn't recommend the 4070 Ti. But yeah, that's kind of a dumb reason. But it is a thing. It's kind of sad that the society we live in is kind of like that, but that is what it is. So anyway, 7900 XT, definitely the way to go. If you're talking about like oversizing for 1440p. Man, we're only like what? Oh, we're already like 20, almost 30 minutes into this stream, and we've already been talking about GPUs like the whole time. So much for Computex. There's like a whole bunch of stuff happening this week in Taiwan, though. Like, it's crazy. So what did I even log in here to do? Oh yeah, I needed to do this. I just need to do like a little daily mission. And then I might switch over to like Jedi Survivor or something. Or we'll actually talk about the Computex news, because we do need to talk about that. There's a lot of interesting stuff. Noctua is coming out finally with new air coolers. So I'm actually pretty hyped about that, because I'm an air cooler person. I don't really like liquid cooling that much. So that I'm interested to know. I mean, I know from what I watched, the Noctua coolers are coming out early next year, end of this year. So basically, holiday season, most likely. Versus the other thing was Corsair. If you guys saw the video from, I think Short Circuit did one, but some of the other YouTube channels, I think Wendell from Level 1 Techs had a video about the ASRock stuff, but there was also one about Corsair. Corsair is now following in the same vein as Lian Li with the magnetic fans. Everything's magnetic, and there's only like one wire, so there's no longer will you have to build a PC with this mishmash of fan cables, 3 pins and 4 pin fan headers, like just going all over the place, all over your motherboard. So that's actually really nice. They're going with the magnet style. I just think that that's going to be really expensive, though. Like, that's... My fear is that when they do stuff like that, they start putting magnets in the frame, and they start using proprietary cables. That's just going to drive the cost. That's going to drive the price of their products up even higher than it already is. Because... that's what happens when you start stuffing your hardware with more and more complex things. The BOM cost goes up, so therefore the cost to the consumer goes up. That's just kind of how it is. So what else do I need to level up? Probably... oh, this is only level 50? This weapon was only level 50 the whole time. I guess this one. You got Linux working? Yeah, I think I saw your post in the Discord that you were... I saw a couple of them where you were working on it. You know, I used to have a Linux box myself. But I ended up reformatting the SSD that had Linux installed. I had Ubuntu. I don't remember the version. It was a couple of years back. Basically, I used to have a Steam box. It was basically a Steam box. So I am familiar with that. I was running that with, funnily enough, the RX 480 reference card that you guys saw in my review of the 7600. That reference blower style RX 480, that was the graphics card that I used to have in my Linux box a couple of years ago. So I'm thinking of rebuilding it. I just have to pick one of my SSDs that I can convert or format so I can install Linux on it again. Because I don't want to do any like partitions. If I'm going to install Linux again, I need to wipe the entire drive and basically start all over. But yeah, I remember playing, I think I played like Monster Hunter. I tested a couple of games on Linux with Steam. One of them I think was Monster Hunter World. Trying to remember what else I tried to play. I tried to test a couple of games. There were some games that had weird graphical issues, like the colors were off. But other than that, they ran. I think I only need to do like one run. And let's summon somebody's broken Clara. Does anyone have a Clara? No, that's too low level. Get this guy's, well... It's on a Crucial MX500. Yeah, for me, if I was going to install a Linux box... See, I used to run... What was I running Linux on? I think it was on my Zen 2 CPU, my 3800X. Or it actually might have been the first gen Ryzen. Might have been the 1800X. So, because right now, like I've got two motherboards sitting around doing nothing. One of them is my Zen 1 motherboard. So basically my Asus X370 Crosshair Hero. So that's the one that I used until I got the X570 for Zen 3 or 2. But yeah, like the X370, that one's in a box being unused. And then the other motherboard that I'm not using is the Intel. Well, actually, now I think about it. Well, maybe I should do a video on my old computers. Somebody, I think Marcelo or someone had asked me like to do a, because remember I did that video about my GPU collection. The motherboard one is going to be kind of boring because it's not going to be nearly as impressive. It's basically a really old AMD motherboard from EVGA, another AMD motherboard for FX 8350, an Intel motherboard for Haswell from MSI, and then there's going to be another Intel motherboard. Actually, my Alder Lake motherboard is I just realized that I have an Alder Lake motherboard. I have a Z690 motherboard sitting around doing absolutely nothing. It's my DDR4 Intel board. That's right. That's right. I just realized that. Yeah, I actually now realize that I have a DDR3 Intel, a DDR4 Intel, and a DDR5 Intel. And then AMD, I have DDR1, DDR3, DDR4, and DDR5. So I've got like 4 different memory generations on AMD. I've only got like 3 on Intel. You could use the 5800X. So the 5800X, interesting story about that one. I still use that one, but that one's not. So that one's not at my place. That one is at like my parents' house. So it's like I have it over there. So like when I go visit them, if I'm gonna be there for, you know, like a day or two or whatever, I actually can use a competent PC over there rather than like having to use some laptop or whatever. So that's the reason why I don't have instant access to my 5800X anymore. I still have the system, I just don't have it with me. So yeah. But I do have the Alder Lake one. Now that I think about it, I don't have any memory for Alder Lake though, that's the problem. Yeah, I just realized that. So that's why I don't use my Alder Lake. Because it's a DDR4 motherboard, I don't have any extra DDR4 laying around. So I'd have to bust out my super old Intel Haswell or the DDR1 I wouldn't even bother. That's way too old. Or the FX 8350, like the bulldozer. Well, it's not bulldozer, the pile driver. But yeah, I guess I should have clarified like what I have access to. So like the 5800X, I don't have access to that, or it's not easy access to it. So don't expect me to be benchmarking stuff with that PC. It's gonna have to be either the 7950X3D, maybe 7950X, and then the 13900K. I could use the 13900K for benchmarking. It's kind of like an office computer, so it's like you could do stuff with it, but it's like it's a hassle to you know, shut stuff down. Yeah, the 7700X, I don't have a motherboard for it. See, that's the thing. So actually, here, let me just bring up Paint. I'll just go through my inventory right now. So, what do I have on hand? I have a 7700X without a motherboard. See, the problem is there's no motherboard. It's because, see, here's the thing. I actually have extra DDR5. This right here is Micron. It's Corsair Vengeance. This is 64 gigabytes of DDR5. That's literally not doing anything. Just sitting here on my desk, doing absolutely nothing. It's cheap DDR5 from Micron. It is 5200 megahertz. 5200 megahertz, 64 gigs, so 232 gig DIMMs. So dual rank, 1.2 volts, so low voltage, basically JDEC, but it's an XMP. It's Intel XMP ready, 5200. So it's meant for Alder Lake, because remember, 12th gen Intel was the one that had the lousy memory controller. So all this like 5200 stuff that claims that it's XMP, this is meant for 12th gen. So I've got that sitting around. The problem is I've got this with no motherboard, and then I've got this with no DDR4, because my Alder Lake 12700K has a Z690 DDR4 motherboard. See, this is the problem. It's like I've got RAM, but I don't have a compatible motherboard for the 12700K because I got my DDR4 RAM is with the 5800X. That's why. So, and I gave my parents the rest of the DDR4 for their other computer. Because remember, you guys had me, remember I referenced like why is the font so messed up? 11, remember this? Remember I mentioned this? This is the other PC that I gave to them. So it's like I have this one and this one. These two together are like not easily accessible. So half of the DDR4 went to this one. The other half is with that one. That's the reason why, like, I have these two PCs. Technically, like, I don't have easy access to them, but if I needed to do some kind of content or some kind of revisiting Rocket Lake and Zen 3, you know, in 2024 or whatever, you know, I could potentially do that. But that's the reason why I have this sitting around with, it's unusable because there's no memory. This is sitting around because there's no motherboard, because the motherboard that this was using is with the 7950X 3D. So it's like, I've got a lot of stuff. It's just like, I can't actually do anything with it. So yeah, these are kind of not an option either. So that's what I have. And then I guess, like, if I really wanted to build a Linux box, I could. My options are, these are going to sound like terrible options. So I could revive the ancient FX 8350 plus the Asus ROG, what is it? 990 FX Crosshair 5 Formula Z. I think that's the name of the motherboard. Why is it like this? Whoops. That's not what I wanted. Whoa, that's not what I wanted to do. Anyway, that's the motherboard. The ROG, basically the best AM3 Plus motherboard for overclocking. I've got it. It's sitting around in storage, so I could revive my old, like, pre-Ryzen. I don't really know. Oh, I also have, well, I mean, I've got this too, and this. I've got these CPUs also sitting around, and I've got an X370 Crosshair 6 Zen 1 motherboard also sitting around doing nothing, but there's no memory. So it's like all these things need DDR4. So I don't have the memory, right? So I can't do anything with these. So realistically, the only PCs that I could build are the FX 8350 with the ROG, or the i7 4770K plus the MSI Z87 GD65 gaming. That's the motherboard. Plus DDR3, because these are DDR3 based systems. So I could build a Linux box with one of those really old PCs. The AMD PC is 10.5 years old. The Intel Haswell is about, actually, you know what? In 2 days, I think in 2 days or so, the 4770K will have its 10th birthday. This thing is going to be 10 years old in like on June 3rd, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So these are the options. Get a Gigabyte B650MK or ASRock B. I'd have to, yeah, I have to get a cheap, because I've got the DDR5. I've got DDR5, 64 gigs of DDR5 sitting around, ready to go. But yeah, I don't have a motherboard, so I'd have to get a motherboard for the 7700X. But yeah, that would be a pretty nice Linux box though, 7700X with a cheap. Yeah, I'd have to get like a cheap B650 motherboard. Because I really don't feel like reviving these. These just seem really, really old. They seem like they don't want to come back. They don't want to come out of come out of retirement. They want to stay in retirement. So they want to sit in their boxes all day and not have to do work. Especially this one. My FX 8350, this one in particular, was running a 4.8 gigahertz overclock. I ran this thing on a 4.8 gigahertz overclock for years, and it was rock solid stable. The Intel one I ran at 4.4 gigahertz overclock. I still remember the speeds, the stock speed. So Intel stock was 3.4 or no, 3.5 gigahertz base, 4 was it 2 or no, 3.9? I think it was 3.9 gigahertz boost was the Intel one, if I remember correctly. The AMD one was stock was 3.6, if I remember, 3.6 gigahertz base, 4.1 or 4.2, I can't remember. 4.1 was all core turbo. I think 4.2 might have been turbo core. Something like that. I can't remember that one. This one escapes me. But yeah, those two are not old enough to spark nostalgia yet, but too old to be really useful for modern stuff. Yeah. Yeah, the only processor that gives me nostalgia is I don't even know if the motherboard works anymore, but I also have socket 939 AM. Wait, well, that's the socket. It's not AM1. It's socket 939. Athlon 64. I don't remember the model number. I think it was Orleans or something, but it was like 3200 plus. 3200 plus. I don't know if it was I think it was Orleans. I forget what the code name was for it, but it was basically the first. It was the single core Athlon. Yeah. I remember you had the dual core. Yeah, because this one ran at 2000 megahertz or 2 gigahertz. But AMD's marketing back then was so weird. Like, according to them, 3200 plus meant that their 2 gigahertz was equal to Intel's 3.2 gigahertz. Meaning AMD's processor was so much more efficient at IPC. Its IPC was so much better than Intel's Pentium 4 at the time that in order for an Intel Pentium 4 to match an AMD Athlon 64, the AMD running at 2 gigahertz, in order for Intel to match the performance of AMD at 2 gigahertz, it would have to run above 3.2 gigahertz on the Intel Pentium 4. That's kind of what that stuff meant. At least that's what they told me back in the day. Like, but I was too young to understand if that was fake news or if that was real. But that's what I remember being told. So, and you guys know what motherboard I had? I had a EVGA Enforce 4? Enforce 4, I think? Or Enforce 3? EVGA Enforce 4 SLI capable. And you know what graphics card I ran with this EVGA, with this NVIDIA chipset? An ATI, an ATI X850 XT. I ran an ATI GPU. I ran an EVGA with NVIDIA chipset motherboard and an AMD CPU. I had an AMD CPU, an NVIDIA chipset for AMD motherboard by EVGA, and I had a Sapphire ATI X850 XT. How about that? That's like basically everything but Intel. That's like Intel, I guess VIA and Intel were the only two that had nothing to do with that motherboard, because I think the LAN, the 100, maybe it was like one, no, maybe it was a gigabit Ethernet. I don't remember anymore. It might have been a 100 meg Ethernet. I'd have to go back and look. But that motherboard, one of the capacitors, I know it like swelled and then eventually failed, but the motherboard still worked. So I don't know. You had the same MSI with two. Oh, you know what? You know how much RAM I was running back then? So when I first built this PC, I was running 512 megabytes of DDR1. That's what I had. Eventually, I upgraded it to 2. Yeah, eventually I upgraded it to 2 gigabytes. Eventually. But it was like toward the end of the time that I had that PC. Most of the time that I had that PC, I only had like 512 megabytes of RAM. You had that same MSI with the 4070, the 4790 Dells Canyon. Yeah, that, see, 4790K is 2014. That was the 2014 refresh. So you guys, so everybody in here understands how Intel will sometimes do the refresh. So that's a really good segue just to briefly talk about Raptor Lake refresh. So this year, unfortunately, we're probably not going to get Meteor Lake on desktop. So what we're going to get is going to be something called Raptor Lake refresh. This is basically Devil's Canyon all over again. History repeats itself. So 4770K is equal to 13900K. Therefore, 4790K is equal to Raptor Lake refresh. So that is what we're getting. So you guys understand? So because this was 2013. June 2013. I know because I still remember the day. Walking into Micro Center on June 3rd, 2013, and buying this and that MSI motherboard, and I was like, I am actually moving to Intel for my main PC. It's a really weird feeling. For someone who had been with AMD since the Athlon 64, because I was on Athlon 64, I was on Athlon 2, I was on Phenom 2, or Phenom 4, or Phenom 6, or whatever it was. Phenom 2, Phenom 2 X4, 965 Black Edition. I was on that. Then I was on FX 8350, and then I'm like, All right, let's try this Haswell. And the only reason why I bought Haswell, the only reason why I got Haswell is because Intel did something that intrigued me enough to actually buy Haswell, and it was the Fiver, the voltage regulator, the fully integrated Fiver, or okay, I'm saying Fiver, but this is fully integrated voltage regulator. Intel had integrated the voltage regulator onto the chip with Haswell. Eventually they took it off. I forget when, but they took it off at some point. And then maybe they put it back in. I don't remember. But they took it out, and they put it back in, and they took it out. So basically they put it in, and I remember listening to JJ from ASUS talking about it, and one of the Intel guys was talking about it with Paul from Paul's Hardware, but back when he was working at Newegg. This is a Newegg YouTube video where they were talking about this Fiver, and I'm like, oh man, that sounds pretty cool. So I was like, you know what? I want one of these 4770Ks because it sounds pretty interesting. Because I want to play around with the Fiver thing. And that was when I learned to overclock the Intel CPU. Because it's like, oh, you can overclock the Intel CPU like the AMD FX 8350, but you don't have to because Fiver introduced the concept of adaptive voltage settings instead of offset. So in the BIOS for the Intel on the Haswell, you had manual, which is static voltage, which no one uses, and then you had offset, which is the traditional way, and then there was this new one called adaptive. And that is what the Fiver added. So that's why I was intrigued. Now, this is the same reason why, well, similar reason why I decided to get Alder Lake back when it launched in 2021 because of the big little. The reason why I bought the 12700K, even though I didn't really need to, because the 5800X was fine, was because of big little. This. I don't know if that's the right spelling, but big little. Basically, I bought 12700K because I was intrigued by E-cores, and then I was let down by them immensely after I was playing around with them and then realizing the sort of problems that they cause with instability in Windows 10 on certain applications and some games in the early days of Alder Lake. So these are the reasons why I actually bought Intel back in the day, or when I did. I bought Haswell because of Fiver, and I bought Alder Lake because of the E-cores. Because they had some kind of interesting, intriguing, new kind of technology that seemed like, hey, they're actually doing something different with this thing compared to what they usually do, which is basically shrink the node and give you the same 4 cores every single time, So at least there was like, oh, they actually did something different here. I kind of want to try this out. So that's the reason why I got those when I did. Intel Arc GPU with AMD CPU is the modern day version of that now? Wait, what? Intel Arc GPU with modern AMD. Oh, of my old PC. Yeah. Yeah. What's funny is, for those that actually bought Alder Lake, or not Alder Lake, for those that actually bought Intel's Arc GPU back when it first launched, it was much easier to get it up and running on a Ryzen CPU, like a Zen 3 CPU. Not a Zen 4 CPU, a Zen 3 CPU. Basically, any CPU that did not have integrated graphics was the easiest way to get the Arc GPU up and running. If you had an integrated graphics CPU, regardless whether it was Ryzen, like the new AM5 stuff, or if it was like an APU, like a Cezanne 5600G or 5700G, one of those. Like, as long as you didn't have one of those, it was easy. But if you had integrated graphics, I remember because I ran into this problem. And that's why a lot of people kept asking me, why are you testing Arc with a 5800X? Why don't you test it with your 12700K? Well, the thing that people don't know, and I told them probably like 3 or 4 times on one of those live streams, was when I first got the Arc GPU, I tried to install it in the 12700K, and I couldn't get my monitors to turn on. Like, literally, I had all the DisplayPort cables plugged into my monitor or into my GPU, and none of the monitors would turn on. Like, the computer would post, and I could tell because I could hear the post beep on the mic on the little speaker, and then it would go, and the LEDs for my keyboard were lit up. I'm like, I'm not seeing a display out. Something's not right here. So I finally thought, you know what? Maybe it has something to do with the fact that my 12700K has integrated graphics. So I unplugged all the monitors, plugged one of them into the motherboard, and sure enough, I got a display out. But then I couldn't get the Arc driver to install. Like, it didn't want to install. It kept saying it was already installed, or you had the latest one available. It was some kind of nonsense like that. It was just really annoying. So yeah. Then after that, I was like, I shut it down. I took the GPU out. I plugged it into the Ryzen, the 5800X build, turned it on. It came up, you know, like the typical big, you know, like sub 1080p resolution. You have no drivers installed, Microsoft basic driver, you know, that sort of thing. Proceeded to install the driver, and then everything worked fine after that. So I was like, man, okay, that's not a very good first impression. If you want to pair your brand new GPU with your same brand CPU. It's weird how it works better with the competitor's thing. So, but anyway, that's, yeah. So bottom end of the story is Ryzen CPU plus, or AMD CPU plus Intel GPU is kind of the easier way to go, at least at launch. I'm pretty sure it's a lot better now, but I still have not tested the Intel Arc GPU. I haven't retested the Intel Arc GPU with an Intel CPU. So maybe I should do that at some point. Some boards that have legacy mode to toggle the E. Yeah, you have to turn that on in the BIOS, and then it basically turns your scroll lock key into, yeah, it does that. Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the E-cores. You're right. You don't want to use an iGPU with an Intel Arc GPU unless you use Linux. Does it actually work with Linux? Like, because I remember last year when Intel was launching, it was prior to the launch, they had a whole series of videos talking about like being able to do dual encoding. Like, you could pair your Alder Lake integrated GPU with your Arc GPU, and they would somehow like work together and improve the rendering speed or something like that. But I could never find anything that actually takes advantage of that. Like, DaVinci Resolve doesn't do anything with it, or at least the free version doesn't. So it's like, I don't understand what I'm supposed to do with this feature. Because I think Joey had asked me about that. Yeah, Joey asked me, is there a benefit to running an AMD CPU or an AMD CPU with integrated graphics plus an AMD Radeon GPU? He asked me that question once. And yeah, and I think I gave him an answer similar to what I just said. It's like Intel have been touting like being able to do that. And then AMD also touted that they could do something like that, but then neither one of them have actually shown any tangible use case where it's like, show me a piece of software that actually uses what you're talking about, and then I'll try it out. It's like, as far as I know, so when it comes to like AMD integrated GPU plus AMD GPU, DaVinci Resolve Studio does that, but the free version does not do that. Now with Intel, maybe it's the exact same story, but I don't know, because I could never find anything that actually states, yes, it does this, or no, it doesn't. Intel Arc GPU can only be used for rendering or media and not both on Linux. Wait, what? Wait, what? So what happens if you disable the integrated GPU in the BIOS and you're on Linux? Well, then what happens if you want to use the Arc GPU for media? and rendering, because I have a feeling it will then do both. Because this brings me to another point. So when I was benchmarking the 7600 and the Arc GPU, I ran into a problem with the Arc GPU, specifically with Borderlands 3. It only happened with Borderlands 3. Every time I tried to launch Borderlands 3, I was getting like 15 to 20 FPS. And I was like, what is going on here? I checked Task Manager. Sure enough, the AMD integrated Radeon on the Ryzen 7950X 3D was like struggling at 100% load on those two little compute dies, or those two little compute cores, those GPU cores. They're not VEG. I think they're RDNA 2. Whatever they are. Those two little things were trying to run Borderlands 3, and they were managing 15 FPS. And I was like, wait a minute, what? What? I don't know what's more amazing, the fact that I'm actually getting 15 FPS out of these things, or the fact that my Arc GPU is sitting there doing nothing. So I went into graphics settings in Windows, and I forced it to do high performance mode, restarted the game, same problem. I clicked on options, manually selected the Arc GPU to run Borderlands 3, specifically Borderlands 3, like application profile. Didn't even do anything either. I went inside the Arc Control Center, tried to see if there's any way to... Because you know how NVIDIA and AMD, they have in Radeon settings and in NVIDIA's control panel, not GeForce Experience, but control panel, there's like a program... Manage 3D programs or something, and then you select the one you want. In this case, it'd be Borderlands 3, and then you say force discrete GPU, or there's some option to do it, and then it does it. People who have laptops run into this problem all the time, depending on what game they're playing. So I was like, why am I having a laptop problem on a desktop? And it was like I couldn't get it to do anything because the control center wouldn't, like Intel's control center has nothing. There's no toggle. So it's like I'm having to rely on Windows, and Windows is saying it's going to use Arc for Borderlands 3, but then it never would. So the only way I was able to fix that was to go into the BIOS and turn off the Ryzen integrated GPU, and sure enough, that forced it to run on the Arc GPU, because that's the only option. So I have a feeling if you do something like that with Linux, I think Linux, well, you're saying you'll have issues, but I mean, if Linux only has one GPU option, it's gonna have to use that. So I think that's how you would fix it. That's kind of the workaround. Turn off the integrated graphics on distros with the 6.x kernels. So yeah. Alright, we'll bring that back later. We might talk about some Computex stuff in a little bit. I think Ray had asked, what is so great about Computex this year? So if you're into CPU cooling, and if you're into content creation, there were some interesting things. Probably the two most outstanding things, or the two most interesting things at Computex that I saw, one was Noctua's new fans. So Noctua's coming out with some new air coolers later this year. So they said early next year, end of this year is the time frame for when they're going to release those to market, if everything goes according to plan. The other big thing that was at Computex was AverMedia, and also Asus, but AverMedia, well, I guess I have to go back and look at what Asus had, but AverMedia, actually, let's dive right into it, I guess. Let's see if Tech Power Up has the pictures. So this is the Corsair stuff. Oh, it looks like there's some new power supplies, but that's nothing new. Like, this is something that I expected to roll. I expected the ATX 3.0 power supplies to start rolling out from all the vendors. Corsair had a lot of stuff to show. They had magnetic fans, but that's not new because Lian Li had those first, as far as I know. Maybe Thermaltake had them as well. I forget who the other one was. What is this? DDR 6384 gigabytes. Oh, this is for Sapphire Rapids. G-Skill had some new looking RAM. I mean, it's the same exact shape of the cooler, just now they've got chrome and gold. I can't imagine how much that's going to cost. And then there's some, well, I don't know what this thing is. There's some weird, like, what is this? This thing has an Intel Celeron with DDR4, so we can completely ignore that. Because if there's something that doesn't say enthusiast on it, I mean, this is pretty much the king of that. And then we got more power supplies, lots of coolers. So like I was saying earlier, like if you're looking for new coolers, there's a lot of them. There were a lot of them. But the only ones that I was paying attention to was Noctua, because they're air coolers. Gen 5 NVMe was another one. That is true. Massive heat sinks for Gen 5. I expect some newer designs. This thing, I don't recommend. I mean, this is going to be the... what is this? Patriot Viper? Is that the Patriot? That looks like Patriot Viper. Anyway, this one, I don't recommend it. You know why? Because I already have one of these, and it has the same tiny little fan on it. And here's the little DC wire. And let me tell you, that fan is completely useless. I mean, it will... If you don't want your SSD to overheat, the only way it's going to overheat is if you're benchmarking it, though. Like, if you're using it like the way I use mine, I'm not benchmarking on it all the time. I'm not writing and reading to it all the time. It's going to be fine without the fan plugged in, because I'm using the exact same SSD. Now, obviously, mine is the Micron generic, or not Micron. Mine is the Micro Center brand, the Inland. So I've had this for a couple of months now, and I'm not running the fan. Mine is running completely passive silent, and it's not overheating. It's just if you do a lot of reads and writes and you do not have the fan on it, or you have no active cooling or no airflow over it, it will overheat. So that's the reason why all these Gen 5 drives have fans on the heatsink. They have active cooling. Now, the way to get around active cooling is you have to have a very big heatsink. And I think there was some of them on here. Well, maybe we have to go and look at... we might come across them again. I'll just kind of look through here. But the... actually, you guys can barely hear... I should probably move myself out of the way. Yeah, this is better. Let's full screen this. There we go. So there's a lot of cases. So I think the main star of the show this year was NVIDIA with their AI thing that none of us are going to really do anything with. So it's not really an enthusiast thing. So if you're an enthusiast, a hardware enthusiast for PCs and that sort of thing, it's totally not NVIDIA focused. It's going to be all like liquid cooling, air cooling, NVMe Gen 5, DDR5, peripherals, power supplies, that sort of stuff, like some headphones or whatever. Like, this is basically what it was. The Corsair 2000D. Yeah, cases. Yeah. See, I'm not a big fan of the really thin looking cases. I like the wider cases because they're easier to fit, like so if you have a large graphics card that, well, not a long graphics card, but like a tall graphics card, one that extends beyond the bracket of the frame on the case. You know, like one that has a fan, like fans that are 90 millimeters or greater, then a wider case is probably going to be better. But see, most of these power supplies, see, like this is going to be a common thing. Like the 16-pin power plug is starting to roll out on all these power supplies now. So Cooler Master is starting to show theirs. I'm surprised Corsair. I don't know if Corsair showed them off. The 360 radiators. I'm actually kind of tempted to get a 360 radiator. Because I don't know. I feel like if there's one way for me to improve my existing system, it would be thermals. So I could probably do more with overclocking and optimizing the CPU. Because right now, like even with the 7950X3D, even though that one runs cooler than the standard 7950X, it still runs all the way up to 89 degrees with my Noctua cooler. Even with like a negative 40 offset on Curve Optimizer, I'm still hitting 90 degrees Celsius when doing a Cinebench run. Now, it's the only way it's stable at negative 40 Celsius is by using load line calibration. And this is something that one of the Discord members reminded me of, because it's something that I used to use when I used to overclock the FX8350 back in the day. I was running load line calibration to help offset voltage droop. So when I realized, oh yeah, you can use LLC in the BIOS for the, let me go look at that real quick. Oh yeah, that one, the tall, like the square looking one, or not square, it's like the vertical rectangle. That's what I called it when I saw it. Yeah. Yeah, I think I don't know if it was Short Circuit or one of the larger YouTube channels showed it briefly. I think Gear Seekers, somebody did the Corsair booth. Someone went to the Corsair booth and did a really, maybe it was Paul's. One of them, maybe it was Paul and Gear Seekers. I saw like 1 or 2 videos about it, about that Corsair 2000D. But yeah, that one. See, I'm not a big fan of the smaller coolers like that. I know a lot of people like small form factor. I really don't care about small form factor. I'm more like Gordon from PC World. I remember he was like, why would you build such a tiny little PC? Like, I don't have anything wrong with small form factor. It's just, I'm the type of person who tears apart the stuff in my computer so often that I can't see myself running like a small form factor build, because cable management is harder to deal with. And then when you're pulling out your GPU and you're disconnecting stuff, or if you're going to add more memory and pull memory out, and the fact that I like to run massive giant air coolers, and then it's annoying when I have to add more memory or take some memory out because you have to get behind the air cooler without taking the air cooler off. It's just, it's much easier when you have a larger, taller case than when you're trying to do all of that with the small case. Because I think Ray had asked me in one, or I think it was Ray. I don't know if it was Ray or somebody else. Someone had asked me in one of my YouTube videos. It was one of my PC build videos. I think it was the 7700X video. Why I use full tower cases. Well, the thing is, I don't use full tower cases. I was kind of not sure how to respond to that comment, because I don't actually have any full tower cases. All my cases are mid tower cases. Like the largest case that I have, I guess, is the Fractal Torrent, and that one is just that one's just a mid tower case. Yeah, it's classified as mid tower. It's a wide case, but it's not a full tower case. So it looks like the NZXT case, but with RGB, and fits more CPU coolers in a 3-slot GPU. Yeah. Yeah. Thing is, I'm surprised we haven't found it here. Enermax had some case too, like some weird case. Where's the, one thing I do like about what I did see, the general theme with the cases now is airflow, which is good, because all those older cases with the mesh, or not mesh, but like the solid panel in the front. Like if this was the front of the case, this would be bad. Like without these side vents on the top of the side. This is like if you know what I'm saying, like the ones where they have like a solid panel in front of the fans, and the only way that the fans can intake air is from the side vents. That's not good static pressure. That's lousy static pressure. So you get lousy airflow on the intake with those older case designs. That's why I never ran a case like that. See, like everyone's doing this now. They're doing like the mesh everywhere. Sugo 17. I don't even know what is this? Silverstone. Oh, Silverstone. I didn't recognize the logo there. I had to think about that. Silverstone has... So I haven't seen a Silverstone case in a long time. But look at this. Everybody's going with these long cases. They're skinny and they're long. So you can fit like a... What is this? This is more than 360. Like a 440 or something? I don't know whatever that's supposed to be. Looks like the NZXT case. With RGB and it fits more... Yeah. Here's an interesting one. This one has what looks like hot swappable drive bays. This is more for like a Threadripper Pro. This looks like a server, like an old school server, a tower server instead of a rack server. Because you have the hot swappable drive bays for traditional hard drives. So this is more for like Threadripper Pro or Sapphire Rapids. I mean, I guess you could use this with the, typical mainstream desktop like AM5 or Intel's LGA. The only thing is typically with the newer platforms like Z790 and X670 and B650, you don't have as many options for hard drives. That's the problem. Like I think on the highest end boards, you only have like six SATA ports now. It's definitely migrating away from SATA. I feel like the SATA standard is going away. But if they want to sell stuff like this, or if they want to fit more high-speed NVMe on motherboards, I really think we need to start seeing a return of U.2. Right now, motherboards are starting to get too full with the M.2 taking up all the space on the board, which is fine because it's a good way to use the space on the board. But the thing is, you can only fit so many M.2 drives on a motherboard. So I feel like 5, 6 is going to end up being like the maximum that you can do on an ATX board without running into problems. So they really need to bring back U.2. Like, we need to return to cables. I know it sounds dumb to say that, but we need to return to cables. Like U.2 cables for NVMe, which is for those that don't know, U.2 is basically, think of it like an NVMe or an M.2 drive, but you have to plug it in via a cable, like an old school SATA drive. So that's U.2. They need to bring that back. That never caught on in the consumer world, which is basically the PC enthusiast space. But it is a thing in the enterprise world, in the server world. U.2 exists. So, I mean, it's not as big as it should be in my mind, because M.2 is also permeating the enterprise space. But I still think that U.2 has a place, and I think you can get a lot more NVMe drives by running cables to actual 2.5-inch drives versus, trying to stick them all over your motherboard. So Leanne Lee, see again with the coolers. Everyone's doing the coolers. Realistically, though, these 2-fan ones, so the TR24 and the TR28, are completely useless in my mind. Like these guys, these two fan coolers are not even worth it because a Noctua NHD15 is out going to perform both of them. It's fast. It's better than both of them. The only all-in-one liquid coolers that are actually better than the Noctua are the triple fan. These giant ones, the 360s. If the cooler is a 280 or lower, it's not as good as a giant Noctua NHD15. So, at best, like a 280, like the one that NZXT had, the one that had the infinity mirror, that one at best is equal to an NHD15. Like the 280, not the 240, the 280. The 240 is worse. The 280 can actually match an NHD15 most of the time. But the thing that I don't like about liquid coolers isn't so much the water, it's just like the reliability of the pump. The pump's lifespan is not as good as just running a giant chunk of aluminum and then having whatever fan you want, in this case a Noctua fan, but you could technically use whatever fan you want to air cool it. So I don't like the pump because the lifespan on it's not that good. The other thing too is over time the radiator will suffer from some degree of evaporation, so you lose performance on the radiator. Whereas with an air cooler like a D15, the Noctua D15 is never going to lose performance over time. I mean, unless one of the fans dies and you just replace the fan. So it's not going to change. Whereas with the radiator, an all-in-one, if the water level goes down after like 3.5 years, 4 years, close to 5 years, then what? It's like, you know, so that's why I don't like air coolers or water coolers. The other reason why I don't like water coolers is because they do not give you any sort of, they don't give you any decent amount of like mild active cooling for your VRM or the other components around the CPU socket. Like for example, the best example I can give you guys is my PCIe Gen 5 SSD. So my PCI 5 SSD sits right underneath the Noctua cooler between the GPU and the CPU. So it's wedged in between them. But the thing is, the Noctua has those two giant fans that are providing some degree of air across the SSD. So it actually gives my SSD some mild amount of active cooling. So I don't have to use that dinky little fan on there that runs at like 5,000 RPM when plugged in. So that way I avoid that. Don't touch. What is this? Oh, the radiator thing. Where's the Corsair stuff? Like, why is it taking so long to get to the Corsair stuff? InWin. Oh man, everybody is copying the Fractal North. You guys see this? This is literally somebody. Man, Fractal came out with the North, and now everyone is gonna start making these type of wood trim computer cases. Like, what is the general consensus of the chat? Like, what do you guys think of like wood accents on computer cases? I mean, is this good? Is this something that you'd actually like? Does this look cool? I mean, it looks like the outside of a skyscraper office building on the ground floor. Why is this like moving around so much? Oh. We're back in the 70s? Yeah, this looks like some kind of record player speaker or something. It looks like a floor speaker for a record player stereo system. That's what this looks like to me. I don't know how I feel about this. This does look very retro. I don't know. I feel like this would not look good in like a bedroom for a bedroom PC. This would look like a media PC, like in a living room somewhere. And even then, you know, that brown aesthetic really has to fit in. So I don't know. That's kind of like, it's like, okay, which would you rather have, this or like this? That I don't know. Now on the Fractal one is actually real wood. The Fractal North has real wood. This, I don't know what this is. It could be wood, it could be fake. Oh, it actually says wood. Look. It literally says wood right here. I know you guys can barely see it, but it literally says ABS and wood. Mini ITX. So they've got real wood. I don't know what this is supposed to be. This looks like some kind of fancy, almost like someone took a server, like a rack server, and they or like a blade server chassis, and they turned it on its side and they painted it like beige or something. Montech. Okay, here's another one. Everybody's going with these dual fin stack air coolers now, and that's because you kind of have to have a dual stack. You can't do single stack radiator or air cooler anymore because all these CPUs use way too much electricity and they heat up instantly. Like in the case of AMD, they shoot up to 95 like instantly. The Intel ones, they shoot up to 100 instantly, but then they also use like 300 watts. I mean, unless you're on an i5. I guess the 13700K is like 250 or 2. It's not as bad, but it still heats up too quickly. So what's weird is like, okay, they think that this is going to solve the problem. This alone is not going to solve the problem. Okay, here's the one that I was interested in. So this new fan design, I am a little concerned about this fan because I feel like the blade is way too close to the frame. The outer frame is, the tolerance is too small. And I remember, I think it was, who was it? One of the smaller YouTube channels, I forget the name. It was not Short Circuit. It was not Paul. It was not Gear Seekers. It was one of the smaller YouTube channels. They had like less than 50K subs. So they're basically larger than me, but smaller than like everybody else. Like one of those guys were interviewing Noctua, and they talked about how the fan tolerance is like 0.7 millimeter. And they also talked about how over time, because the fan spins so much, the centripetal force eventually can actually warp the blade. It can actually expand and flatten out the blade because it's spinning for so long. So they had to do whatever they had to do to make sure that it wouldn't affect the lifespan of the fan. I don't remember what exactly he said, the technical terms he was using to describe like how it's not going to be a problem. But I'll believe it when I see it, because to me, this is cutting it way too close, and unless they have some kind of adamantine type like material on this blade so that it doesn't bend or flatten out over time and then start like scraping up against the frame there. I don't know, they use a special material. Yeah, it's some kind of special material. It's not the typical plastic. But that's the thing. Like, I do like the refined setup. They're going with 8 heat pipes now. I think the current one is 6. And they're moving it higher up so it's not constantly blocking the even the D15 today is not a problem with the first. That can hold that tolerance. It's a bit expensive. Yeah. The thing is, with the newer one, it's higher up, so it's, I don't know, because the current design doesn't cause an issue with the graphics card, at least for me. I don't know about all motherboards, but I guess Noctua ran into compatibility problems with enough motherboards that they were like, okay, yeah, we need to redesign this so that that's not a problem anymore. And the other thing too was they have offset mounts for AMD and Intel. So this is another thing that I noticed. Like they're doing... This is for the delidding. So if you're doing the DeBauer delidding mod, like this, if you're doing the contact frame. See, here they have a Ryzen CPU, and they've delidded it, and they've put the direct die frame. But see, what this does, Noctua now has this mounting kit for something called offset mounting. So what they have found is that the cooler tends to be too high up from the actual CCDs. So meaning on the middle of the CPU, the IO die would be the middle. So you have these two CCDs that sit way lower on the socket. So when you put the Noctua on there, the CCDs are close to the bottom edge of the contact frame, or the IHS, or in this case, it directly mounts to the bottom of the Noctua cooler, but it's going to be toward the bottom of it. So with this offset mount, it essentially pushes, or I guess it makes it so that the cooler sits more centered on the actual CCDs instead of the IO die. Therefore, in theory, it lowers the temperature. Now, they actually had some metrics. They actually have some metrics here. Now, this is kind of hard to read, but you can see, like, the blue is the stock. Now, I don't know if this is... I don't know if this is a mistype, because I kind of think that the 7850X runs hotter than the 7600X, because the 7850X is 190 watt versus 125 watt. But according to this, if you do the DeBauer mod and you do direct die results in 17 degrees lower temperature than stock for a 7600X. For the 7950X, you're looking at a 13 degree difference if you're doing the direct die. Now, what they also show is that if you then do offset mounting, offset mount, which is basically this thing on the top and this thing on the bottom, where now the cooler sits on the CCDs as the midpoint as opposed to the IO die as the midpoint, you see an additional reduction. So it looks like negative 19. So you're doing like 2.3 degrees lower. And then with this one, you're doing about 2 degrees. So it looks like if you don't do the DeBauer mod, you can shave off 2 to 3 degrees with just by doing the offset mount by itself. But then if you do the D-lid, you can get like a significant drop in temperature. So yeah, the IHS seems to be the limiting factor. I think this applies to Intel as well. I've certainly seen a lot more people dare to D-lid their Intel CPU than the AMD ones. But I guess it works for both. I mean, clearly these results from Noctua themselves seem to indicate that there is significant performance increases, or I guess temperature reductions, improvements in temperature. And the cool thing about Ryzen is for every 10 degrees that you can lower your temperature, you can gain an additional 100 megahertz just by a 10 degree reduction. So that is actually free performance. So if someone's willing to do the D-lid and they do the offset mount from Noctua, they're looking at a 200 megahertz overclock, like an instant overclock, just from doing that mod without even doing anything else. You leave it stock, you do these mods, you get 200 megahertz additional on the boost. It will do it automatically. That's how it behaves. There was a video from Gamers Nexus where they had extreme overclocker guys who actually are AMD employees who were talking about this. They were doing LN2 overclocking back when Zen 4 launched, back in late September is when they were doing this. And I remember them saying that for every 10 degrees that you can shave off the temperature, you gain 100 megahertz. So, yeah, I mean, this is... Am I going to do this? No. Am I going to do the offset? Maybe. I'm not going to delid my CPU just to gain, 200 megahertz. But, if you're someone who's a true enthusiast, then yeah. I mean, it's... If you're willing to remove... Because you can see right here, this is a really good image, actually. This shows how much or how low those CCDs are on the IHS. So it can show, like, just by doing the offset mount or the offset mod using from Noctua, you now have the CCDs as more of the central point for where the cooler actually sits on the CPU as opposed to the IO die. So that is very, very interesting. You use the frame and you lap the CPU and water block, and that lowered at 20C. Wow, yeah. Yeah. And that makes sense, and that's what Noctua shows here. Oh, you didn't delid, though. You lapped the CPU. Okay. Because see on... where was that picture? Right here. Yeah, see, they're doing about 19 degrees with direct die plus offset mount. Oh, but you didn't do offset mounting. But yeah. I mean, this is the AMD result, so the Intel one might be a little bit different. The Intel one in general just runs very, very hot, very, very quickly because it uses so much power under load. So that's the reason why. Yeah, that's probably the reason why more people delid the Intel ones than the AMD ones. But the thing with the AMD ones, though, like, you do that to AMD and it just gives you 200 megahertz automatically. That's pretty cool, though. And it looks like they had a crosshair, an ROG crosshair. Is that a hero or an extreme? That looks like a hero. No, actually, no. That's neither of them. That's the Gene. That's the micro ATX. See, it only has the 2 DIMM slots. Yeah, that's the Gene. Went from over 100 to 83C just doing that. Yeah, you know what, though? That clearly indicates that both of them need to improve how they implement their IHS. Their IHS... Because remember when the AMD one came out? When this design first came out, everybody was complaining, saying that the IHS, or integrated heat spreader, is too thick. Everyone was saying that it was too thick. And I kind of think that this indicates that that's true. So, we'll probably see a slightly different design with Zen 5 for the IHS. I am surprised how low those CCDs are, though. Like, they are really down there. Looks like the Tech Power Up guys did cover a lot. Montech, what is this? Superflower. Oh, this is a small... This is like a... What do they call it? SFX form factor for the power supply. I remember seeing this. I didn't like this. They're basically plugging the cables directly onto the PCB. I don't like that. I think it's better to have the actual connector. I think this is more prone to bending the cables and causing issues prematurely. I don't know. I don't like it. It's not a tested. It's not time tested in my mind to move to this style of doing cables for power supplies. So I don't actually like it. I did see this. This was interesting. I forgot who covered this. Oh, it was Steve. Steve from Gamers Nexus. I remember them looking at this. So this is a fully passively cooled system. The entire chassis is essentially a giant heatsink. They do actually have copper tubes, but these are copper tubes. These are not heat pipes. This is kind of how the exchange works. Interesting idea. My thing when I first saw this was it's an awesome idea, but the problem is the cost. I think it's just going to be cost prohibitive. It's a lot of metal for one thing. I think they're using copper for most of it, and there's aluminum on the top. So it's a lot of metal. So it's going to cost a lot of money. The aesthetics are okay, I guess, for what it is, but I just don't know. Like, it's a novel idea, but it's one that I think, like, I'm just thinking of it like if I was on Shark Tank, you know? Like, I just kind of think that the market opportunity for a product like this is just too small, but it's a nice idea. I just don't think, like, it's going to cost so much money that only the highest end enthusiasts, like people who buy like 4090, would be able to get something like this. But then even then, would someone who has a 4090 buy something like this and then passively cool like all their stuff? I don't really see it happening. I don't know. It is still a novel idea though. I do like it. Unfortunately, I just don't think the market opportunity, the TAM, is large enough. So, yeah, Joey's saying he wouldn't get it. So yeah, basically you're basically just further validating what I said. What is this? This is a keyboard. Oh, this is like a fully modular keyboard. You can put whatever keycaps you want. So my only question with this is, does it allow you to do Topre? Probably not. Topre is like the most rare type of keyboard that you can ever find. A Topre keyboard. Are there any keyboard enthusiasts watching this right now? I don't think there are. But I've played around with a lot of different keyboards over the years, and my go-to is always going to be Cherry MX Brown. Cherry MX Brown is still my favorite. If I had to choose one, if I had to live with one for the rest of my entire life, it would be Cherry MX Brown. Otherwise, if there was a second one, it would definitely be Topre. Topre is almost legendary, but some people won't like it. Topre is really cool though. And then the third one that I would choose is, it's going to either be between Cherry MX Green or Omron, Roamer G. Roamer G is also really nice. But Roamer G, again, is not for everyone, because it's slightly mushy. And some people just don't like that mushy feel, even though it's a mechanical keyboard. So that's Roamer G. But yeah, so like right now, if you guys... Here, let me just type some random stuff. Hold on, let me make sure the microphone's able to pick that up. I think you guys can kind of hear me typing. That is Cherry MX Brown. What you're listening to right now, that's Cherry MX Brown. I use Cherry MX Brown. So for obviously we're streaming on the 7950X3D. So, and I am using a very old, 10-year-old Cherry MX Brown keyboard from Cooler Master. And then on the streaming PC that I normally stream from, that one is using a Corsair. It's one of those Corsair keyboards with the RGB. That one is also Cherry MX Brown. So for my two Ryzen systems, I use Cherry MX Brown. Now for my Intel-based system, I'm using Romer G. I'm using a Logitech Orion whatever, and then it has the Romer G keys on it. So it's kind of like Cherry MX Brown, but it's a little bit mushier. For working, you use the ergonomic. Yeah, actually, yeah. I was going to mention ergonomic, like something like this. Or the one from Microsoft that where your keys are actually kind of like this instead of flat. You know, instead of typing like this, you're typing kind of like this. Yeah, I used to have one of those, but it broke. I used to have an ergonomic keyboard where you type like kind of like this. Yeah, that was actually really nice. Unfortunately, they don't make any. Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about. The Microsoft ergonomic keyboard. I used to have one, but unfortunately it broke, and I replaced it with a Cherry MX Brown. But man, you know what? That's what they need to do. They need to make those ergonomic keyboards with like Cherry MX Brown keys. Oh, you use a vertical mouse? Yeah, I've never used the vertical mouse. I have used the what do you call it? The track ball or the track wheel, like the red circle sphere thing that moves. I have used one of those for work before. What's this? See, everyone's doing the double. Basically everyone's copying the Noctua D15. Like the Noctua D15 has so many clones now. That literally looks like someone just copy pasted the Noctua D15. And they put like some small 120 millimeter fans on it. The tracker ball, yeah, I've used one of those before. It's always weird if you use one of those for a long time and then you go back to using a mouse. It feels a little bit. It always takes like a minute or two to get used to using the mouse again. Because you get so. Oh, here we go. This is what I was looking for. This is what I wanted to see. Avermedia. Okay, here we go. Okay, the Mingle Bar. I don't know what this is. A total solutions to collaborate with one device. So, okay, that's... Avermedia is the one that I was looking for because Avermedia is coming out with new capture cards. But I don't think their capture cards are as good as I wanted them to be, but they're still pretty good, like the new ones. So they have... Everyone's trying to get in on this streamer market. I don't know, man. I feel like this is just oversaturated at this point, and they're just pandering to people who just want to sit at home all day and play video games and live stream to twitch.tv and think that people are going to just donate a bunch of money to them. Like, I just don't think that's not how society works. So it's unfortunately like that's not reality. But this is still kind of a fad for a lot of people. So these live streamer microphones, this literally looks like somebody fused a Blue Yeti with a Audio Technica AT2020. That's literally what this looks like. Somebody basically combined the two of them together. Oh, you know what? You can't really see it from here, but see that booth in the back that says Yuan or Yun? They are also a company that OEMs a lot of capture card hardware. So, I don't think Avermedia uses their designs. But it's funny. It's kind of ironic that these pictures are from the Avermedia booth, but the company in the background, Yuan, is the ODM or the OEM for a lot of these capture card ASICs. Did you hear about MSI's PCIe 4 Thunderbolt add-in card? No. Was that covered? I did not hear about that. That's interesting, though. So my question with that is, would that be the new Thunderbolt? Like, because the thing with Thunderbolt is right now there is Thunderbolt 4, which is basically Thunderbolt 3 with some new security features, and then there's Thunderbolt 4, which is again like a new revised Thunderbolt 4, but it's still Thunderbolt 4. So that's supposed to be the newer one. So I'm guessing the MSI one is probably going to be the newer one. Whereas all the ones that are on the market today from Asus, ASRock, and Gigabyte are the first gen Thunderbolt 4 implementation. Yeah. So that's why if we're talking about Thunderbolt on MSI, it'll be interesting to see if they require some sort of header cable or not. Because if MSI requires the header cable, then it won't work on the AMD motherboards. And in fact, it won't work on the Intel ones unless the Intel ones have the header on them as well. So that's the big problem for MSI. Because MSI, as far as I know, they don't have the Thunderbolt header on their motherboards for this generation. Okay, here is the Live Gamer 4K 2.1. So this is something that I thought was going to be really cool, but the only problem with it is it's saying up to 4K 144. I think what they're not saying here is that this is pass-through. So it can do 4K 144 pass-through. But I think if you were to record with it, it can only record 60 hertz. I don't know if it can do 120 hertz. If it can do 120 hertz, then it's probably okay. But I am not 100% sold on this because it says up to 144, 4K 144. It doesn't say record 4K 144. That's what I'm looking for, because when they say up to me always seems like there's some kind of limiting factor on what it can do. But this is one of the things that got my attention at Computex, like newer capture card technology, because the capture card market has been kind of very basically boring for the last 3 or 4 years now, because we've gotten 4K 60 capture cards from Elgato and AverMedia, and then obviously Magewell has theirs, but Magewell ones are very expensive. Those are more like business class capture cards or enterprise. So Live Gamer Ultra 2.1. What is this? Oh, this is the what is this though? Is this is an external capture card, but the thing is it's saying, oh, you know what? Maybe this one. Maybe the internal one can actually record at 4K. Cuz see, this one says 4K 60 video capture output. HDMI input up to 4K 144. So this one, so the external one looks like it is 4K 144 pass through and 4K 60 actual like recording. So, or output. Yeah, video capture recording. So that's a recording. So this one might actually be the one that's not that great, although it's external. It doesn't mention Thunderbolt anywhere, so I'm wondering if this will actually work on a standard USB-C, or if this actually needs 20 gig USB-C. Because the only capture card that I know of that's external that can actually record 4K 60 with HDR is the Live Gamer Bolt, and that makes use of Thunderbolt 3. So it basically makes use of the 40 gigabit USB. Yeah. That's what it looks like. So that's interesting. They've got like some other weird thing over here. I don't know what that does. That's kind of interesting. Oh, the other thing too that I noticed a lot at the show at Computex was all these different like Stream Deck clones as well. Like a lot of this stuff is It's basically like Elgato now is going to have to deal with a lot of competition because Elgato has kind of had like a large stranglehold on the streamer market because they were the first to do. Did I go to Computex? No. No, but I watched a lot of the coverage of it. I haven't watched that much coverage of it, but from what I saw, there was only a few things that were general common themes. One was CPU coolers. Another one was like streaming peripherals, like what we're looking at right now. And that's the thing. Elgato is basically the. I hate to compare a company to Apple, but Elgato, which is actually owned by Corsair now, for those that don't know, Elgato is kind of the Apple of the streaming market when it comes to peripherals because they had they were the first to market with the Stream Deck that actually caught on and stuck. So they were really successful with that. They've always made capture cards, or they've actually OEM'd. Well, they haven't OEM'd, but their OEM is a UN, I think, but which I think AverMedia is actually better. But Elgato has historically sold a lot of capture card gear as well. But I don't like their capture cards as much as the AverMedia ones. I've always found the AverMedia ones actually work better. Your neighbor is the CEO of Corsair. Wait, really? Is he at Computex? I would expect the CEO of Corsair to be at Computex this week. Because they had a pretty big show floor. Your neighbor is not neighbor, but I live near them? What do you mean? Oh, like in that area? See, so they've got like an AverMedia webcam, and then I don't know. There's like all this. This is really weird because it's like an LCD screen on the Stream Deck. And then they've got an external capture card. Yeah, I don't know. If anyone's looking for a capture card, I would definitely recommend AverMedia because they're not super expensive. They're not like Magewell levels of expensive, but they're also actually better than Elgato. Although I haven't, maybe to be fair, I haven't used Elgato, like their 4K capture cards. But from what I've used of Elgato's software has always been kind of flaky. And you either have to refresh the capture device or you have to update the firmware. And oftentimes updating the firmware still doesn't really solve some of these problems with them. Whereas with AverMedia, it's like you basically open it up, install it, and it works, and that's it. I mean, they might have a firmware update, but anytime they have a firmware update, I read the release notes, and it's like whatever problem they fixed, I never had that problem. So it's like, I guess it was a thing. Okay, so I think, is that the last one? No, there's like more. So ASRock Phantom Gaming, 24 gig, 7900 XTX. That is a newer design. I don't think that looks like the one that they... Oh no, I'm thinking of the Tai Chi. Here it is. Yeah, this is the one that Joey had. So the Tai Chi. And then what's this? The Steel Legend. Oh, they've got a... Wait a minute. This is an RX 7600 triple fan, big cooler. It's even taller than the PCIe bracket. You can see it right here. It overhangs past the PCIe, or not PCIe, the actual case bracket. And wow, it's a 7600 Steel Legend. That panel gap between the fan, which one? Between which one? This one? Or this one? Or are we talking about something else? The 7600. Is it the Steel Legend? Oh, this one. It has to be the Steel Legend. The panel gap between the fan. Between fan. Oh, you mean right here? Okay. Yeah. So wait, what's this? There's a drone. Kingston has a drone. Fill in, survey, and receive Kingston swag. Why is there a Nintendo Switch right there? There's like a Nintendo Switch and there's a drone. What does this have to do with Kingston? It's very random. Or is that like a Kingston Steam Deck? Because it looks awfully like a Nintendo Switch. Deep cool. See, like a lot of like CPU coolers, like almost every other video that I saw recommended to me about Computex was basically somebody talking about CPU coolers. Either CPU coolers or like live streamer stuff, like webcams or something. Like that's basically what it was. Or like some gaming chairs or DDR5 and NVMe. That's basically what it was, which is fine. It's all computer hardware, but it's kind of a strange Computex because it's the first really big Computex with everybody traveling again like normal. However, like the beginning was so front loaded with AI stuff from Nvidia that literally it was so off base and away from, like, out of touch with what Computex is typically supposed to be about. And then you had basically nothing from Intel, and then you had nothing from AMD. As far as I know, like, did they even do anything? Like, the fact that so much content from Computex is about CPU coolers and peripherals and capture cards and streamer gear and these kind of things, but it's like, there's no motherboards. I mean, yeah, they showed some motherboards or some revisions to existing chipsets, but it's basically the same thing, rehashed or refreshed. And then there was like no, like it's weird because it's like we're in one of those years where there's no platform change, there's no new socket, there's no new CPU architecture. So it's just kind of like, this is what it is, right? Like, when I remember Computex 2019 Computex, which was the last really big Computex, that was all about Zen 2. It was all about Ryzen Zen 2, the Ryzen 3000 series. Everybody was talking about when Lisa Su went and showed, like, remember she showed the dummy CCD thing, and everyone was like, man, there's got to be a second CCD option. There's going to be a 16 core, like a 3950X, and sure enough, there ended up being one. So that was 2019 Computex. This one is basically going to be remembered as, or forgotten, but this is going to be remembered as, oh, the one where they showed a bunch of like CPU coolers for existing CPUs. And a bunch of new cases, you know, but none of these new cases actually stand out to me. Like, the only one that really stood out was the one that was a ripoff of the Fractal North, the one with all the wood trim. You couldn't see the CPU because the diamond ring was in the way. But see, here we go again. Now here's Deep Cool. Here comes Deep Cool. It's like, here comes the next one. All these other CPU coolers. There were some interesting things from Noctua. Like, where did they show? Oh, I think we already scrolled past Noctua. Noctua had the new Threadripper stuff for the new, like, Threadripper 7000 series. Whenever that's supposed to show up. Probably at the end of the year. Yeah. But see, like, there's some motherboards, but literally this looks like the exact... This doesn't look any different. This is basically, somebody at MSI was like, I'm gonna take the Dragon from the Meg, and I'm gonna spray paint the Carbon's Dragon so it's the same gold color as the Meg Ace. Like, that's basically what they did. Like, okay. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's still the same motherboard. It's like boring. Oh, what's this? Whoa, man, what is this? Like, all this radiation right here. Wi-Fi 7, 5 gig. Oh, here we go. You could heat up that leftover pizza, like just sit it right down here and just blast this. Start up like a Wi-Fi download on like 5 computers or something and just blast the radio. Asus, what's this? Oh, we've seen stuff like this before from Asus. Like that's not new. Like that's whatever. Fantex. Okay, another CPU cooler. And here we go again. Another CPU cooler. What is this? Fantex. Cables. Power. Oh no, this is okay, Fantex. Okay. Okay, that's cool. What else we got? Fantex. Okay, a new case. It's all glass. It's all. I don't know. How do you guys feel about tempered glass? I personally don't like tempered glass cases. I think they're very impractical. If you have a dog that basically like rushes up against the glass and like slams into it wrong or drops something or whatever, and this is on the floor. I guess this is for people that put their computer tower on their desk. I personally will never do that because I think that's like a waste of space. I just put it on the floor. Like my computer cases, they always go on the floor. On a carpet floor or on a wood floor, it doesn't matter. They're going on the floor. So it's like, to me, even though I have the fractal torrent, it's sitting on the floor. So it's like, yeah, the glass panel's cool, but it makes the case a lot heavier than it would be otherwise. You don't like 3-sided tempered glass cases? Yeah, like the fractal torrent, the back side is also glass. So it's like two glass panel. One on the side, or one on the side that you can actually see all the components, and then there's one on the back. It's like, why do I need to see all my cable management on the back? The reality is it's up against a black aluminum frame, so it's like you never really see it. But it's like, why make it glass in the first place? You see what I'm saying? So, because I have the first case that I got that had tempered glass was the Cooler Master, and I still have it. The Threadripper system's in it. It's the Cooler Master something, Master Case, whatever. That one has a tempered glass panel just on the side. The other side is just a regular steel panel. That's fine. What I don't like about that case is you have to basically use a large screwdriver every time you want to like unlock the glass panel. They don't have like a quick disconnect or like Corsair's latch or Fractal's like pull-out tab. Like the Cooler Master case that I have doesn't have any of that. Now I guess the newer ones have something similar to that, but the older ones, they don't. You like the Corsair latches? I like them too. That's why I think to this day my favorite case that I have is still the Corsair 600T. Like I think it's the most practical design, no tempered glass. You still have a mesh side panel, mesh intake on the front, and works. Nothing. I don't have to worry about glass. I don't have to worry about like cracks or anything like that. It's full metal. I mean, the bottom has like some plastic stuff on the feet, but it's one of the best ones. The 800D. Oh, is that the full tower? The Corsair Obsidian? Is the 800D the Corsair Obsidian? Yeah, the Corsair Obsidian. Yeah, see, I don't have any full tower cases. How do you like the full tower case? Because for some reason, people that watch my PC build videos think that I have full tower cases. Those are not full tower cases, people. Those are all mid tower. I don't own a single full tower case. Easy to work in? I guess, but doesn't it just make it so that you have way more space between the bottom where the power supply sits and the top where the motherboard goes. Do you have to run PCI, or I guess do you have to run power extension cables from your like the EPS 12 volt connectors on the motherboard all the way down to the power supply? Because that's my only concern with the full tower. The full tower is so tall sometimes that if your power supply is at the bottom, you gotta run like extension cables for your EPS 12 volt because they can't reach all the way up there, then curve around. Otherwise, they're gonna be bending at like a 145 degree angle or something. Oh, okay, I guess. Okay, so the motherboard is kind of in the middle. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess that does make sense. You know, I didn't really think too much about like using a full tower case specifically for water cooling. That kind of makes sense. I've never used the full tower case though. Okay, there's like all these things too for water cooling. Speaking of water cooling, you have all your compression fittings. Who is this? Some brand called Cyclops? Everyone's doing the infinity mirrors now. See, I don't like it when... I don't like when the case has the USB and the front panel audio on the front of it like this. I'd rather it be up top or like angled on the top. Because when you have it like this is just waiting for someone to walk by and just like knee all of this or like just smear all this and bend those cables and break everything. Yeah, that's a disaster waiting to happen. So I don't like that. What is this? Oh, this is wait, Thermaltake has RAM now. I've never I guess this is new? I didn't know Thermaltake had DDR5. I didn't even know they had DDR4. Carbon fiber RAM? When I first saw, you know, from a distance, when I first saw the thumbnail, this looked like some kind of like sunglasses or something. Like if someone was gonna do interior decoration of their house. Like this is like those color palettes that you can choose from. Like which design do you want? And then when I opened up, I'm like, oh wait, it's actually DDR5 heat spreaders. Hades, I don't know. What's this? Thermaltake. Oh, more Thermaltake power supplies. Yeah. See, I've never had a... Well, I take that back. I have... The best Thermaltake power supply that I've ever had is a 750 watt. I've never had any of the higher wattage. I have a Thermaltake Tough Power 750. 750 watt. That's actually what I was using with the Linux PC. But I lost a lot of the cables for it. I don't know where they are. They're easy to recognize if I find them because they have red colored ends on the connectors. The connector ends are red instead of black. Oh yeah, and then they've got these server things. Wendell did a video about this. This looks cool. This is one of those things where this is like this is kind of a threat to Dell and HP and Cisco because this is essentially Gigabyte. Well, okay, Tian, some other one, but essentially now you have, or is this Micro? No, it's not. This is not Super Micro. You've got like these Taiwanese companies now that are starting to sell actual like rack server and blade server chassis. It's kind of interesting because They've been doing it for a while. It's not like it's new, but their market percentage was actually always small compared to the large, like Dell and HP. HPE, Dell, Cisco, these are like the big ones. IBM used to be really, really big back when they still did hardware. But now I think it's like Gigabyte made a huge push into the server market. These other guys, Tyan, Asus, MSI, etc. I don't know. Well, I think MSI also is doing that. I don't know. I think ASRock is on the Ryzen one, on the Threadripper one, or not Threadripper, the Epic ones, and then who was the other one? So basically, what I'm saying is now you have the motherboard vendors that we are very familiar with starting to sell enterprise class hardware. And actually, now that I remember what Gigabyte was doing, Gigabyte's one wasn't necessarily this, although they do this as well. Gigabyte was touting the NVIDIA stuff. So all that stuff that Jensen had shown off during the press conference for all the things with the AI that he was talking about for like 2 hours, Gigabyte's going to sell that solution. Like, you can actually buy that stuff from Gigabyte. Did you see the new yellow cables that show when you didn't plug your power cables in all the way? I did not see those. Who was making those? Was that Thermaltake? Oh wait, here's another NVMe drive. So here's another Gen 5 NVMe. See, the only one of these that would actually be worth using is one that actually had a fan header. Like an actual fan header, not like DC power, and it runs max 5,000 RPM all the time. It's like, that's not usable. That's not a good experience. So, BioStar's got some kind of motherboard here. What is this? This is supposed to be like an AMD. AMD, the easiest way to tell, I mean, obviously it says it right over here. You guys can't see it because I'm in the way. But the thing is, if you want to easily identify if it's an AMD LGA, if the latch is pointing up, or if the little bar is pointing up, it's AMD. If it's pointing down and it curls, then it's an Intel one. Like this one, bam, Intel one. See, it comes down and it curves. That's the Intel one. The AMD one goes up. It goes up. Enthusiastic GM Gaming. Hey, we're just talking about all the stuff from Computex that happened this week. Mostly CPU coolers, NVMe drives, and streamer stuff like Stream Deck clones and capture cards and things like that. What is this? Oh, this is some Gigabyte, or like this. That's the Aorus Master. That's the Aorus Master. Probably some revision or something. Unsorted. It's probably some Aorus Extreme. What is this? Like, what? Whoa, this is weird. So they're putting the audio in the middle now to add more USB. But this doesn't even have more USB than the normal one. So I don't know why they would choose to do it that way. Zalman. That's interesting. I wasn't expecting to see them. Zalman has a keyboard from 1995. Check this out. They're doing the retro. Wait a minute. This one? Okay, I don't know what that's supposed to be. But then this one has RGB. It looks like a Dell membrane keyboard from 1999. And it's got... Well, okay, never mind. It's 10 keyless, so it's not from 1999. But, you know, early 2000s, mid 2000s. But it's got RGB. That's how you can tell they're taking the, like, the old style and they're putting RGB on it and they're calling it the new thing. Yeah, the Computex everyone will forget. Right, yeah. See, this right here is proof alone that this is the Computex that people will forget. They're showing off keyboards that are retro style from the 1995. But it's 10 keyless. See, the thing is, what they did, the way that you can tell this is not an actual 1995 keyboard is the fact that it's 10 keyless. It's a TKL. TKL, that means it is not from the 90s, because in the 90s, that was not a thing. Like in the 90s, all these keyboards that look like this with this color scheme, they had actual numeric keypads. that's how you can tell it's not really a 90s keyboard. That's how they'll say, oh, it's industrial design and it's inspired by the mid 90s look. You can tell that I'm basically grasping at straws here, because this is the Computex that everyone's gonna forget. Like, okay, see this one? This one looks retro, but it's got a volume rocker. It's got a volume rocker. That's how you can tell that's like retro, but not at the same time. Oh, this one, okay. This one looks retro. It even has the numeric keypad. The only problem is this one doesn't have your home and like home, page up, page down, all that stuff. It's not where it's supposed to be. Office Space branded. Zalman, so Zalman, for those that don't know, Zalman went through like bankruptcy, if I remember correctly. So it's weird to see them back. I'm pretty sure that they were in a bankruptcy several years ago. And here they are with their brand new products. They survived their, what is it, Chapter 11? Or whatever. They're back from bankruptcy, and this is the new product. I don't know how long they're going to be able to stay away from it again. Oh, man. Where's the cool stuff from Zalman? Because, you know, Zalman is the one that I remember for making the donut-shaped CPU coolers back in the day. I have two Zalman coolers. One of them is with the 11700K, and the other one is in a box. But it used to be with the FX8350, although it wasn't adequate to cool an overclocked FX8350. That's one ugly keyboard. You know, some people would disagree. Some people would say this is actually a timeless look. Some keyboard enthusiasts would actually like something like this. You got to admit though, this one with the large bezel right here, like on the bottom below the space bar, this does kind of have a timeless look. This one, not really, because it's too thin. The bezels are too thin. Oh, check this one in the corner over here. Look at this black keyboard, like in the top left. That one looks like a Microsoft membrane ergonomic keyboard right there. That's what I'm talking about. That's actually a true keyboard right there. This is so weird. Like, this is what Zalman is showing off, though. Like, everybody's showing off all this RGB coolers and stuff, and then Zalman's showing stuff like this. They're showing, like, retro, like, mid-90s looking keyboards with... They probably have RGB in them, though. Oh, wait. Hold on. This is Zalman case fans. They probably are not magnetic. Well, they might be magnetic. Everyone's doing that magnetic stuff. The daisy chain magnets and stuff. I bet they're doing the same thing. Stunning and bright addressable applied. Okay, so it's... Yeah. Who was the first to come out with the I think it was Lian Li. If I'm not mistaken, Lian Li was the first one to do the magnetic frame, the magnets on the fan so they stick together without having to use the screws. Now everyone's rolling out the same stuff. Zalman's got RGB on the fan in their power supply. But you know what's cool about this? Not the RGB fan, but the actual, like, the thing over here on the panel that tells you how much power it's pulling and stuff, like load wattage and voltages and stuff. That's cool. I don't know what this little, what is this? Oh, that's the short to get it to light up, I guess. Oh, no. Oh, yeah. That's to light it up. That's the, that looks like that's the, off the EPS. That's from the EPS for the motherboard. Now, the thing is, okay, there we go. So they do have the 12 volt, very high power connector thing for the 600 watt. 80 plus platinum. That does have a decent amount of space for that fan to breathe. So that's okay. This one also seems like it's okay. There they go again with the more retro keyboards. There's an ergonomic one. I don't know about that color scheme. It looks like it would fit in with a Noctua build. Like traditional non-Chromax build. There's just too much of that. I don't know why whoever took this picture, man, they just really wanted to take the picture of those mid-90s looking keyboards. These are keycaps. I guess. I just don't know, like, why. I mean, this is a cool idea, but the thing is, if someone's a hardcore typist and they're going to be typing a lot on their keyboard, if they put these things on their if they change their keycaps for these characters, they're going to ruin these characters. I can guarantee that the paint on these keycaps is going to fade and wear away like after a year, if that. I mean, it's a cool idea. Maybe, I guess what you could do with these is you could put them on like the function keys or any of the keys that are not really used that much. Maybe, but not like on the normal letters and numbers, no. Hot swaps. See, so, but you'd have to have like certain sizes for the larger, like the tab key. People don't use that much unless you're like a programmer. And then the home key, the end key, like those aren't really used much either. But all these function keys, like F6 through like F10, like how often do people use F10? When you're in your BIOS and you make a change in the BIOS, you press F10 to save it, but I can't really think of any other time that I would use F10. Dolise cream. See, that's an ergonomic one, but it's not like raised. It's flat, but the keys are angled. I don't know. It's probably fine. I do kind of think ergonomic keyboards, they don't get enough coverage. Like, people don't talk about them that much. They're, from a productivity standpoint, ergonomic keyboards are actually pretty nice. This looks a lot like the Corsair, not the 5000D, but the 4000D without the mesh on the front. See, I don't know about this. Like, Zalman is in a weird spot. They came out of a bankruptcy, and then they also, like, they're doing what people are not doing. You know what I mean? Like, everyone's going for airflow and mesh front panels. These guys have got the glass or the plastic on the front panel. I don't know how I feel about that. This is very, this looks so 2018 to me, seeing this. Okay, here's one that looks more interesting. Okay, so they do have some mesh designs, so that's good. This is very closed off, though. But I guess the side, with everything lit up, you'd be able to see it. Maybe, or maybe not. I don't know. I think there's, well, I don't know. This is another Zalman one. So this one looks like it's mildly inspired by the Fractal North, or one of the Corsair, like 5000D. Because it's got like the vertical, it doesn't have the same mesh pattern as the Corsair, but see, then they went above and beyond and they put this stuff on there. At least it doesn't have the wood, yeah. Yeah, this one, if there was like a black one or a gray one, I think this would look better because it would, or if they did like some kind of contrast color for the front, maybe that would look better. But yeah, this is probably the best one. This is, if I had to like choose a Zalman case out of all the ones I just looked at, this one is probably the best looking one. And it actually has a pretty interesting little panel here that has a clock on it. It actually tells you what time it is. That's interesting. And then it has a CPU temperature, GPU temperature. This one's probably my favorite one. It's the most practical. So I can actually see myself using something like this. Oh, they okay, that's cool. They're still making the CPU coolers. You know what? They actually have a nice one that is dual stack, dual fin. But the thing, and they also have like a temperature LED on them. That's cool. You know what? This one actually be my next air cooler. This one right here, the CNPS 13X Plus. Oh, that's the only picture they have of that. Yeah, that's, wow. I kind of like this one. It actually tells you the temperature. Because one of the things that I was always kind of a little bit envious of those that had the CPU coolers or the all-in-one radiators was the ability to show the CPU temperature on the actual LED display, on the infinity mirror, if we're talking NZXT. But, you know, all the other ones that had those LED, those LCD panels on the actual pump, you could display your CPU temperature. I kind of like that. And I was like, with the air cooler, I don't have access to any of that. So this could be a game changer, potentially, for the premium air cooler market, because they actually have what looks, this is probably some prototype unit. Well, no, they actually have model numbers and stuff. This is something that I might actually get. Like legit, like this might be something that I might actually get. The big one over here on the right. The one that has two sets of fin stacks. Because you can see it's showing, it looks like it's saying 24C or something. So it's probably doesn't have a heat load, so it's just reading the ambient. But I can see myself using that. That's actually pretty cool. Because I'm surprised, like, no one else thought of this. You know, like Deep Cool. Although all Deep Cool does is literally just copy whatever, like, Noctua and Scythe are doing. So it's like, I don't expect Deep Cool to innovate, but, you know, like, Noctua spent like 3 years trying to come up with the next fan. Meanwhile, Zalman comes out of bankruptcy and then, like, puts together a Deep Cool looking air cooler, anodizes it black, like Be Quiet, and then decides to put an LCD panel that shows you the temperature. That is actually innovation right there, people. That's all you had to do to innovate. Who would have thought putting a temperature indicator on an air cooler is all you had to do to innovate? So I might actually get one of those. This is an okay case, but it looks very 2017. I don't know how to say it. Like, it doesn't really look super modern, but it's okay. So what is this? Wait, they've got like, what is this? They've got like actual LCD screens on the front of Zalman's a pretty interesting brand. For those that don't know, Zalman is actually based out of South Korea. So Zalman is Korean. And you don't see a lot of Korean like PC DIY type brands. Most of them are from Taiwan or China or the US or somewhere in Europe. Like, there's a bunch out of Europe, like Austria. Noctua's from Austria. Be Quiet's from Germany. So there's like a whole bunch only like in a couple of handful of countries, we'll say. So you don't often see one from like South Korea, but Zalman's actually from South Korea. So they're kind of rare, you know, like they're like the one that I can think of that's actually from Korea, and it's Zalman, and they went through bankruptcy. I don't know how I know that they went through bankruptcy, but anyway, it's good to see them still around though. But that is actually pretty unique. You know, they've got this. You know what this makes me think of? This makes me think of like the refrigerators that have the LCD panels on them, so you can see like the temperature inside and all that kind of statistics. The problem with putting LCD screens like this, how much is this case going to cost just because of the LCD screen? It's like buying a case that doubles as an iPad. Can you imagine if the front LCD panel was detachable and it turned into an Android tab? If it doubled as an Android tablet? That's interesting. I never would have expected something like this. It's to me, it seems like it's total overkill, and I don't really know what the intended use case is. But you never know. It's like one of these things is gonna stick somehow. At some point, there'll be some use case that crops up and like validates one of the reason for these things to exist. But oftentimes it's not the case. Oftentimes these things are like a one-time deal. They don't sell enough. They're gimmicky. They come across as gimmicks and like no one ends up buying them, and then it's like that's it. So, and that's the story of LG smartphones right there. 34C. Okay, that's their. Okay, so they have an interesting design for the actual radiator mount to the CPU socket. Or to the CPU itself. That's interesting. It looks like it's a small panel over like a heatsink. They're doing the glass thing with the front and the side like that, where it's seamless, like the height cases. That's very current trends. So it's interesting. There's a lot. I didn't expect them to have this many Zalman pictures, but it's good to see that Zalman does. Not only do they have all those retro looking keyboards, but they actually do have like modern looking things as well. So that's good. And then ASRock looks like ASRock's got some new. These look like refresh designs for the Phantom Gaming lineup. I don't recognize this cooler from ASRock, so this must be a newer design. Wait a minute, did that other one light up? No, I don't think so. It looked like that Radeon logo lit up. Oh, here's another motherboard manufacturer that is also starting to sell their own gaming branded keyboards and mice and power supplies. This sort of stuff hurts the existing resellers of power supplies. So who's gonna suffer from stuff like this? Like when ASRock starts selling power supplies, because you know MSI started selling power supplies a few years ago, and currently MSI has some of the best power supplies in terms of the ones that support the PCIe 5.0 spec. The problem is when a motherboard manufacturer like MSI, in this case ASRock, also starts selling power supplies, and they're also selling keyboards and mice now, that further saturates an already, in my book, fully saturated market. That market being the PC peripheral market, so keyboards, mice, probably RAM at this point, power supplies, computer cases, all that kind of stuff. And that just hurts companies like Corsair, NZXT, EVGA, Kingston, those type of companies, they suffer from this because now they've got a larger, company like a motherboard AIB or a graphics card AIB now selling stuff that you normally were one of the main suppliers for, and it's like now you're competing with these guys who probably have larger budgets, larger business units, more R&D. It depends, because they might not devote that much resources to this sort of stuff, but the fact that they're breaking into this market means that they have made significant investments in this space, and they've been planning for this for a couple of years at least. So it's tough. I mean, I can't imagine being in EVGA's position right now, where they have left the GPU market, they have power supplies, and whatever else they sell. I really just, for them right now, it's power supplies. But now you've got more and more of these larger, like ASRock, for example, coming in, starting to sell their own Phantom Gaming branded power supplies. Well, what's going to happen to EVGA, in a few years when you have all these others? Like, for instance, Acer, right? Like Acer is going to supposedly, I don't know how they're able to do this. I don't know why NVIDIA would allow Acer to do this. But Acer originally was selling Intel GPUs. Now they're starting to sell AMD GPUs. And I think I saw like something from Computex where Acer was going to start selling NVIDIA GPUs. So somehow Acer went from not selling any GPUs for the entire company's existence, and then all of a sudden they started selling Intel GPUs last year, and then they started selling AMD GPUs this year, and now they're going to also start selling NVIDIA GPUs. Why does NVIDIA allow them to do this somehow when they didn't allow XFX to do that? It's kind of weird. I don't know what they do to get the ability to do that, but that's kind of annoying. That's annoying to people. Like when someone like Acer comes in and is like, "Hey, we're gonna start selling like all three vendors' GPUs." Well, how does Sapphire feel? They only sell AMD GPUs. It's like, oh, now Acer's gonna sell AMD GPUs. Like that kind of thing. And how does PNY? PNY only sells NVIDIA GPUs. They don't sell AMD or Intel GPUs. Well, now here comes Acer, and they sell all three. See, that's why I don't know why NVIDIA allowed them to do that. To me, I don't know. I don't know how they were able to like be approved to do that. Oh, here's Corsair finally. Wait, did we skip past BioStar is another brand who's making GPU from the three brands? Making GPU. Oh, BioStar? Really? Was there a video at Computex about that? Corsair. So Corsair's doing... Oh, here's Charcoon. Charcoon's like another German company, if I'm not mistaken. What does Charcoon have? A chair? The only thing I have from Charcoon is an actual headset, a gaming headset from like a long time ago that does 5.1. It actually does 5.1. It has the sub, the center, the rear and the front, and the left and the right. That's the only thing I've ever owned from Charcoon, and it's like, okay, I'm curious, because I know that they did like headsets and stuff, and it's like, you click on Charcoon's pictures, and lo and behold, what do we get? A keyboard. You get, oh, they got cases too. Wait, there's a lot of Charcoon stuff. What? I just skipped past all their stuff. Okay, here's the headphones. This is sort of what I think of when I think of Charcoon. I think of like headphones. Now they've got a case. Okay, it looks pretty much like all the other ones. And then, okay, there's another one. That one looks a little bit more interesting. It's got like an interesting design, but it is not mesh, so I don't like that. But it's cool. It'd be cool if that whole thing was actually mesh instead of just like a front panel that blocks air. Interesting. Okay. What is this? I don't know what this is. Oh, that's the bottom of the mouse. Keyboard with a replaceable frame. Customizable frame. Interesting. It looks very much like a GameCube controller that had the type that was see-through. Okay, you can see the lights. It's not diffused because the lights are going through the see-through keycaps. That's interesting. The cable is on like a cable management roller thing. I'm not a big fan of the 10 keyless. Like the thing that I don't understand is, so Cooler Master used to make the 10 keyless like this, but they also made one that had the numeric keypad, and then it integrated all these keys into that numeric keypad. So when you had numeric keypad, when you had the numlock on, you had the numeric keypad. When you turned the numlock off, you basically had access to these keys. I'm surprised like not enough people do that, because I actually personally would prefer having the numeric keypad and these buttons combined together, and you basically toggle the numeric keypad on or off depending on if you want access to these buttons or not. Like, the actual keyboard that I'm using right now is that keyboard that I'm talking about. So I don't know why everyone went with 10 keyless, but I would rather have the numeric keypad. I would rather have this smaller form factor, but with the numeric keypad, with these keys overlaid on top of the numeric keypad keys. And when I want these keys, I turn off the numeric keypad. There must be a video somewhere talking about this thing, but I don't know. It might only Der Bauer or somebody might cover it. I don't know if Gamers Nexus or the larger channels will cover that. I'm noticing the Agon monitors, though. What's with this League of Legends branding? Oh, they're just doing, like, themes. Okay, that's interesting. But that mousepad has nothing to do with League of Legends, but then the monitor says League of Legends. That's kind of weird. It's interesting. It's artistic. I can understand how it can appeal to some people. It's cool. That's cool. If you're going for a certain look, a certain build. This says a lot of mesh. This might actually be the best case that I've seen from them so far. The Sharkoon. This stuff. I don't do wireless mice and keyboards. Like, for those that don't know, like, I only ever use the wired stuff because I don't have to deal with batteries. And the thing is, if you have a rechargeable keyboard, assuming those exist, why would you even have it wireless in the first place if you're just going to end up plugging it in all the time? See what I'm saying? So, I'm not a big wireless peripheral user. And then they have a chair. It's honestly, out of everything that I've seen from Sharkoon, the chair is the most interesting thing. I actually like the look of the chair. The chair actually looks ergonomic. They have a nice chair. That's probably the best thing I've seen from them. Okay, now we've got Corsair. Corsair, what is this? Upside down? So, these are terrible pictures. Why are they upside down? Why are they on their side? Anyway. There we go. The new Corsair magnetic fans. Now they're basically the same as everybody else. You know what's funny? I bought, like, a few months ago, I bought, like, the clearance older Corsair fans for my case that's currently housing the 7950X 3D. So I bought, like, the last batch of their, like I think I got them from Best Buy. Yeah, it was Best Buy, because Micro Center didn't have them in stock. So I went to Best Buy, and they literally had, like, one set of 3 Corsair fans, RGB, like, sitting on the shelf. And that was all they had. And I was like, okay, this means that in a couple of weeks or months, Corsair is going to release their new fans. And here we are, magnetic fans, just like Leanne Lee. Man, why are all these pictures on their sides? This is terrible. This is the 4000 or 5. This is the 5000D, I think. Why are the pictures upside down or on their side? This is terrible. But this looks. Wait a minute. Hold on a second. This is a 5000D with a wood trim front mesh. Is this fake? Is this a fake wood panel? Like, do you guys see that? Do you guys see that? That's like somebody went and either made this plastic look like wood, or they actually. There's no way that's real wood. Do you see how intricately cut this mesh is? Like, who would actually like cut wood into that? The precision to make it not have all the splinters and stuff is going to be ridiculous. What is this? Is this like some kind of fake? I hope this is fake wood, or I expect it to be fake wood. Like, this is probably plastic. If this is real wood, they're going to charge an arm and a leg for this just because of that pattern that someone had to saw through that. There's a project by Logitech or some other brand where a mouse pad is a wireless charger and you put the mouse and keyboard on top. I can believe that. Couldn't that might as well also charge your phone though while it's at it. Man, whoever took the Corsair, whoever Tech Power Up sent to take the pictures of the Corsair booth, they're either a new employee or they really don't know what they're doing, or they held their phone at the wrong like angle the whole time, because all of these pictures came out horribly. Like, what is this? And they're all on their side. It's the ICUE AF RGB Slim. Oh, these are the Slim fans. New DDR cooler design. I kind of like the look of the Dominator ones more so than the Vengeance. I don't know. There's some newer one. Okay, you can do stuff like whatever this is doing down here, like sine waves and stuff. Whoa, what is this? This is okay, check this out. This is not Dominator Platinum. This is Dominator Titanium. This is the Dominator TI. This is Corsair Dominator TI DDR5. Dominator Titanium. Crazy. Notice they got the Elgato. Notice how they leveraged their Elgato acquisition to their advantage. These are terrible pictures. Like, man, it's just kind of ruining it because Corsair has one of the largest showings at Computex. Interesting. Oh wait, now we're on Cooler Master. Hold on. So this is the last Corsair one. And then the Cooler Master one, it's back to normal. Wait a minute, what is this? This is a car, or is this, what am I looking at? I don't even know what I'm looking at. Corsair, Cooler Master Cosmos Infinity 30th Anniversary Master Liquid. So it's some kind of case. Orb X, I can't tell like what that is. It's a chair. Oh, it's that one. Oh, yeah. I remember that they showed this at CES. That gaming chair system thing. Yeah, I remember this now. This is cool. I would like this if I didn't need like more than one monitor. It's cool though. It's pretty cool. It's a nice concept. I remember seeing this at CES. This is not the first time I've seen that. It actually looks a little bit different. I think they changed the the front. And I don't remember the RGB lighting on the side, so they may have added the RGB. I guess one of the tech channels that probably saw this at CES probably commented on it. Doesn't have enough RGB, and then they were like, okay, let's add it, or something like that. And that's the last picture. Oh, wait, there's more. There's food. That actually looks pretty good. Thermal take. This is a thermal take guy. Their cases actually, yeah, their cases have also had a very similar look over the years. Asus. The Asus probably, if I had to imagine, you know what Asus probably talked about? If NVIDIA talked all about AI, Asus talked all about Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi 7. That's what I expect Asus to have talked about. Let's see. See, they're talking, well, no, that's a keyboard thing. Site-to-site VPN. See, they're talking about because they're leveraging Wi-Fi 7. Wi-Fi 7 is the new thing now, and WPA 3 instead of WPA 2. So they're gonna talk a lot about, like, yeah, see, I knew it. WPA 3. Here we go. Because we know Asus is all about, like, the routers and stuff. Because unlike MSI, Gigabyte, and ASRock, Asus actually has a pretty large network division. Like, they sell a lot of wireless routers and stuff like that. So it makes sense. I mean, they have phones too, right? Like, they have the Zen phones and things like that. So they kind of compete in other market verticals that the other motherboard competitors don't actually have anything to offer. So that's quite interesting. Okay, here's all the NVIDIA stuff. This is the AI things. All the AI things that he talked about. Here are all the partners. So let's see. What we got? I don't recognize any. Okay, AWS, Ubuntu. Uniqlo is up there. I'm not sure exactly why, but I guess. I don't know who most of these are, actually. Just looking through this list. Oracle Cloud, Red Hat. Why are they just putting, like, Linux stuff on here? I mean, okay, I guess it makes sense because they worked with them. But it's like, okay, they're mentioning Ubuntu and Red Hat, CentOS, but, like, where is Microsoft? like what? Google Cloud? Where's Azure? Why is AWS and Google Cloud up here, but Azure isn't? I guess they're not partnering with them? Does that mean Azure is going to be using AMD's MI Instinct stuff? VMware is listed. Like, so many Linux distros are on here. Okay, there they go. Coming soon. So they're using all of them. All right, so they're all in there. Never mind. I don't know why they didn't put them in this slide. The throughput. All the things. So, yeah. So basically, see, a lot of people are thinking that AI is going to die off after a while. I don't think it's going to die off in the same manner that people saw crypto die off. The difference between AI and crypto is crypto was questionable and a lot of the general public kind of frowned upon it, and they saw it as a get-rich-quick scheme, and they didn't really think much of it. And it was very, very hard to convince people of it as a viable alternative to fiat currency because there's really nothing backing it. So at the end of the day, and with AI, however, there are a lot of tangible use cases. There are a lot of very obvious use cases for AI, and I feel like that is the reason why it's much easier for NVIDIA to pivot to AI as their primary money-making machine, we'll say, compared to the gaming market. Because at the end of the day, NVIDIA recognizes that they would much rather sell the majority of their products to the enterprise and the business. Meaning NVIDIA would much rather do a lot more business-to-business sales on the enterprise side as opposed to business-to-business sales that result in selling to the consumer market, aka the gaming market. So that is the reason why you can expect RTX 40 series cards to not go down in price, even if nobody cares to buy them. Because here's the thing, like what NVIDIA will do, and now I guess we can go back to Paint to illustrate this. Where is it? Okay. Because what they'll do is, so let's say you have the consumer market, and then you have the business, the enterprise market. So you have, actually, you know what? Why don't I exit out of this game real quick? Because it's... Hold on. Let me do something in the game real quick, so you guys can see what I'm doing. I need to do something in the game. I need to send these guys to go collect something, and then I'll just turn this off. I think I'm actually low on these. Yeah, so we'll go and get these. But what's going to end up happening is if, like, the tech press basically bashed the RTX 4060 Ti, and they're probably going to do the same thing to the 4060. And NVIDIA has tried to kind of like fix it by offering the 16 gigabyte edition of the 4060 Ti, but they're charging an extra $100 for it. That is not going to go well with a lot of people, and that's probably going to make it so that no one really cares. Okay, wait, what's my... Oh, I'm going to have to do that later. Oh, I'll do that later. Let's go back to Paint. And then I'm just going to exit out of this. Okay. Okay. So you have the consumer market, and then you have the business to business, or you have the enterprise. We'll just call it enterprise. There's multiple ways to like phrase this, but essentially you have pure business to business sales, and then you have consumer sales. Now, NVIDIA doesn't directly sell to consumers. They use intermediaries, so resellers like Newegg, Micro Center, etc. Well, in addition to that, they have their partners. So you have Zotac, formerly EVGA used to be in there. You have Asus, all those other guys, MSI, etc., PNY, Galax. So you've got a bunch of like partners that you can sell your product to. You just sell the chip to them, and then they take care of it from there. They either follow your reference design, and they just copy paste it, and they sell a GPU, or they make their own custom design, and they sell that. So, but at the end of the day, you're still selling to the consumers as opposed to selling to a business entity like an LLC or a sole proprietorship or something along the lines where the tax classification is going to be different at the end of the day compared to selling to consumer. So they desire to sell more of the enterprise because the profit margins in the enterprise world are much, much higher than the consumer world. Everybody complaining about like a RTX 4090 being $1,600. Everyone's complaining about that. But the thing is, they turn around and sell like Quadro, or what used to be called Quadro, but they sell the professional workstation card for, you know, what was the price of, well, it's going to be like around $5,000 starting or something like that. So, and it goes up from there. So you can imagine the profit margins on the enterprise side are much, much higher. Now, the BOM for the enterprise product is going to be higher than the consumer product because it's going to usually have more memory, and that there's a cost associated with that. And there's also going to be more, well, you know what's interesting? It can sometimes be cheaper to manufacture for the enterprise, because in some cases, if you're selling to a server-based company, if someone's going to build a server, like Dell, for example, and they're just going to run their own fan cooling for the server, you can literally just sell them your GPU with an aluminum fin stack, and you don't actually need the fan. You don't actually need to worry about the heat pipes being very elaborate and how the noise is going to be. You don't have to worry about the fans themselves. You don't have to source any fans from Delta, etc. So you can actually make a lower cost product for enterprise as a single unit. Now, what'll end up happening is you'll make way more money because you'll sell you'll volume sell. You'll sell like 1,000 GPUs. Or, well, okay, you'll probably sell way more than 1,000 GPUs. But you get what I'm saying. Like, you're doing volume sells, and in most cases, especially for server, you don't have to worry about like the fans and that sort of thing, because the server chassis, the server vendor, in this case Dell or HP or whoever, in this case Gigabyte's doing this too, like they are responsible for that hardware. You only have to sell them your PCB with your magical AI accelerator die, and you have to provide, like HBM memory, and maybe whatever additional VRAM that you need, or whatever it is, and that's all you sell. So in some cases, the enterprise cost can be lower overall. And then the other thing too is you don't have to worry about the consumer warranty, because the business-to-business warranty is usually going to be 3-year, 5-year, some cases 7 years, and it's kind of like bulk licensing. So it's not like individual sales. So in a way, there's a lot of advantages to selling in the enterprise market. You get higher profit margin, you get easier deals because you're selling to large enterprises that are going to buy fixed quantities that are typically large quantities all at once, so you can recognize and realize higher revenue and therefore quicker return on profit, as opposed to selling to the consumer side, where oftentimes you have to sell to a distributor, your AIB partners. You have to offer rebates for a lot of this stuff. It's a lot of, like, I guess, additional bookkeeping that goes in. And then there's also the other things too. When you're dealing with consumers, you have to deal with potential safety hazards and those sort of things, because these things are going to be people's homes. They're not going to be sitting somewhere in some data center where it's strictly climate controlled and all this sort of stuff. There's a lot of like strict regulations or strict operating conditions for the server grade hardware. Whereas with a GPU in somebody's desktop PC in their house or their apartment or wherever, you have no control over what they're going to do. Like, they could have like a cat and all this, like, it sheds all this, cat fur, and then it gets clogged up into the fan and all this other stuff. So you have no idea. Like, there's so much more unknowns. And then like the whole thing with the RTX 4090 melting connector. Remember that whole thing? That was probably a nightmare for NVIDIA to have to deal with at the end of the day, because it's super annoying. But in the enterprise world, you're far less likely to encounter things like that. So NVIDIA, I feel, has gotten to a point where it's like they know that they can, if they want, they can make the journey to the business side. So, full disclosure, I have no stake in how NVIDIA does their business. I have no idea what their plans are. I'm just guessing. I'm just making educated guesses based off of how I've observed what they've done in the last 5 or so years. Basically, since they started talking about machine learning back in the days of Pascal, and then it was Turing, and then Ampere, and here we are now with Ada. So what I suspect is there are board of directors at NVIDIA that are wanting the company to grow from a consumer-centric corporation and migrate to being more of a enterprise-focused company. Basically, they want to do what Amazon did. So Amazon, for those that don't know, well, okay, people are all familiar with Amazon.com, the website that you can buy whatever you want from, usually, most of the time at least. And what they know less about is that Amazon, probably back in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, Amazon developed something called Amazon Web Services. And that is the smartest decision Amazon made for themselves. Because if Amazon never did that, Amazon would be no different than Newegg today. A lot of people don't really know this about Amazon. They just think, oh, they got so rich and wealthy because they sold all this stuff online. That's actually not true. That's how they got started. But remember, back in the 2000s, Newegg and Amazon, okay, Newegg was like the company that you would buy electronics from online. You wouldn't typically buy electronics online from Amazon. Like, not in like 2005. You know what I'm saying? You would go to Newegg for something like that. But Amazon basically kept expanding their portfolio, and they made a lot of decisions when it came time to, well, where do we want to be in 5 years? Where do we want to be in 10 years? So they developed Amazon Web Services, which is basically web hosting. And then they started selling rack space and server space and storage space and all this stuff to a lot of companies so they could like run their stuff in their data center as opposed to running it on their own, like the own on-prem data center. So this was a huge thing for them. And this is actually where Amazon gets most of its money today, is through the AWS, or the Amazon Web Services. So think of it like this. The old Amazon.com is essentially what NVIDIA is today, primarily. Like, they do stuff in the enterprise. They have a pretty large stake in the enterprise. It's only gotten much, much larger because of this AI thing. And it's only going to get a lot larger because of this AI thing. But think of Amazon Web Services as the goal for NVIDIA long term. NVIDIA wants to be known as the primary dominant player in the AI, machine learning, automation space. The same way Amazon today went from being nothing more than a Newegg.com like e-tailer to a juggernaut in the hyperscaler cloud services market. So NVIDIA is trying to do the same sort of transition. It's a different type of market, but it's the same sort of scenario. So this is the reason why people who are complaining about NVIDIA charging so much for GPUs, well, too bad, because that's not going to change. They have their sights set on a completely different outcome for where they want to be long term. And they're going to do everything in their power to achieve that goal, as long as Jensen is at the helm. Because he knows that that's going to be his ultimate legacy. He basically wants to achieve the same success that Jeff Bezos was able to achieve by migrating Amazon from an online bookseller to a giant cloud service provider. So I hope that kind of paints the narrative, because when this is all said and done, NVIDIA will look back on their company history and they'll look, oh, the gaming market. That was like the time when Amazon sold books online to people out of Jeff Bezos' garage. You know, that's kind of the picture that Nvidia is going to look back on. It's like, oh yeah, the gaming market. I remember when we were a big part of that. That was cool back in the day, like 20 years ago, you know? Like, that's kind of what they're gonna do. That's how they're gonna look back on it. So and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, like a lot of the Nvidia fans are gonna be like, no, I don't want them to do this. Well, too bad. That's not what they're not gonna listen to you. Like, they have their own plans. So it's like if someone wanted to tell Amazon, no, Amazon, you're supposed to sell me my books. I want my books. Well, they still sell the books, but that's not their primary focus. That's not where they make all their money. See? So Nvidia is not going to leave the gaming market, but they're going to dedicate less and less of their resources to that, if that makes sense. They're going to focus way more heavily on the enterprise side, just like how Amazon went really big on the web services piece. So Amazon saw that as the next best thing, and they were right, because if you guys think about this, in 2004, in 2005, did anybody imagine that hyperscaler giant web-based clouds would be the way the internet works today? Like, back then, how did the internet work? You know, YouTube was brand new. There was no such thing as Twitch. There was no such thing as, like, streaming games and having people watch you play a game. That was not a thing. And if you wanted to run a website, if you wanted to run a really big website back in the day, like if you wanted to be like an IGN.com or an MSN.com or some large scale website, you actually had to have a pretty robust server infrastructure on-prem, like at your actual business office. You couldn't be doing this in the cloud. There was no such thing as, oh, I'm just going to like rent some space from Amazon and just run my business out of their cloud. No, that wasn't a thing back then. So, but that was their big bet. Their big bet was that they would house all these servers and people would come and they would like rent out the rack space and the server capacity and all this stuff. And it actually paid off. That was the big thing for them, and here we are today. So likewise, NVIDIA sees ChatGPT and AI and all this other stuff that today we can kind of see the use cases for it, but we're only at the beginning of it. Right, we don't know what the long-term ramifications of the whole AI infrastructure and all that stuff's going to look like when it's all said and done. That's like somebody back in like 2002 trying to predict like what Web 2.0 and Web 3.0 is going to look like. You know, they can only at best partially guess or partially imagine what that would look like at the time. So I think that's going to be it for this stream. I think we hit on all the topics. We did Computex. We did hardware stuff. We talked about NVIDIA. I did want to talk about NVIDIA, and we did cover them. So that's basically where they're going. They have a plan. They have an action plan. They're moving. They're making moves. It seems like they're doing the right thing. At least I think so. Because if I had the amount of IP that NVIDIA has in the machine learning space, to me, this makes sense. It makes sense to pivot and move away from the consumer gaming market. Even though the gaming market is still a big market, it's a multi-billion-dollar market. The thing is, at the end of the day, NVIDIA's space or NVIDIA's position in that market isn't really going to get much larger. In fact, it can only really get smaller when you think about it, because NVIDIA already is kind of the dominant player. So there's not a lot of growth opportunity for them in the gaming market, and that's the reason why they've kind of hit a maximum growth point, and if they want to keep growing, they have to pivot and move into other spaces, and this whole AI thing is the natural expansion. To use a StarCraft term, this is NVIDIA taking their natural expansion. So, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Once again, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Thanks.